There wasn't much going for young Harry Potter in his life. He lived in a small, bug-infested cupboard, spiders and rats his only friends. He was a small, skinny child, scrawny to the point of starvation. He was a freak. According to his relatives, he'd always end up doing something bad, something freakish and naughty, despite his best efforts not to, and they'd punish him for it. Currently he was nursing the results of his latest punishment. It was only a few bruises and some small cuts, not as bad as last time. That broken bone had taken weeks to heal. He still thought it unfair. No matter how freaky he was, there was no way he could have had anything to do with Dudley's birthday cake exploding. He was in his cupboard at the time. He was sitting upon his small, dingy bed, scratching at a scar on his chest whilst watching the fleas and spiders scurry about the room. He watched as one of the spiders began constructing a new web in between the 5th and 6th steps, the silken threads glinting with the reflected light seeping through the cracks in the doorway. He'd often thought about running away. He even gotten as far as planning his escape several times, but when he actually came to it, for some reason he never managed to go through with it. Even now the thoughts of running away wouldn't seem to come easily, and left his brain feeling foggy and sluggish. His thoughts turned sour as he contemplated his situation. He couldn't see many ways to escape his predicament. His teachers and the police all thought him a troublemaker and delinquent. They would rarely talk to him, let alone help him. It was that day, the 30th of July 1986, that Harry Potter's thoughts first turned suicidal, the day before his 6th birthday. It was over a year later before he eventually broke down into a deep enough depression to actually go through with it. He'd accepted that running away wasn't an option. His mind just wouldn't let him go through with it. He was once again sat upon his mattress under the stairs, listening to the quiet hum of the television and the not-so-quiet snores of his Uncle Vernon, who had fallen asleep in the lounge again. His Aunt Petunia had gone upstairs an hour ago with his cousin Dudley, who'd been banned from sleeping on the couch like his uncle when Petunia found she could no longer carry him up to his bed. Slowly, making sure not to make any noise to wake his uncle, he opened his cupboard door and stepped out into the hallway. His relatives had forgotten to lock it after his afternoon's punishment. The bruises were still bright around his neck from his uncle's pudgy fingers, and his breathing still came with a quiet wheeze. Stealing a quick look in on the snoring man, Harry stealthily made his way into the kitchen. Looking around, he quickly spotted his aunt's new set of stainless steel knives in their wooden block. He made his way towards them before a thought struck him, and he instead turned towards the refrigerator, once more scratching at the scar on his chest. It had become a habit of his lately. He didn't remember where the scar came from, but he knew it had appeared the day after his last attempt at running away from the house. He'd sworn he'd never call the place home again and stepped out the door. Oddly, he couldn't remember the rest of the day, but had woken up later with the new scar and a fresh beating by his uncle evident on his body. It still hurt from time to time, but then he'd just go to sleep and the next day it would be fine again. Looking up at the fridge, he thought, one last meal. One proper meal before the end. That's what prisoners get, isn't it? With that, he opened up the fridge door and gazed in wonder at all the food laid out before him. Most of his association with food had been the bacon and eggs he'd have to cook his relatives in the morning and the leftovers he could scrounge off of his aunt's plate. The other two rarely left anything if they could help it. He filled up on all the ham and cold sausage he could. He grabbed some bread and cheese before downing a carton of orange juice. Finally done, full for the first time he could remember. But just to be sure, he also picked up an apple from the bowl on the counter. Crunching on the juicy treat, he moved once more towards the knife block. Slowly, with shaking hands, he reached up and pulled the largest one free from its housing. Thinking slowly, he remembered scenes from the brief TV and radio news articles he'd heard from his cupboard. Most people would cut into their wrists, whilst killers preferred the neck because it was quicker. Not wanting to spend any more time in the hellhole of a house he was in, he raised the knife to just beneath his chin. He paused, fear clouding his mind and halting his hand. Could he really do it? Could he take his own life? He certainly didn't have anything to live for, and yet something stopped him. The thought of actually killing himself was reprehensible. He tried to steel himself and grip the handle harder. After a minute, though, his arms sagged and he let out his held breath. He couldn't do it. As he stood there, he suddenly felt something behind him and heard a ragged breath-like sound. Turning, his blood ran cold as he saw his uncle, purple-faced with fury at the sight of Harry, stood there. The evidence of his late-night snack on the counter and in the open fridge, holding a knife to his own throat. "Why, you cowardly, ungrateful little freak!" His uncle spat the words at him from across the kitchen. "How dare you? How dare you eat the food I work so hard to provide for my family? How dare you stand there with my wife's knife in your hand, you cowardly little shit? I'm going to break every one of those fingers and then we'll see about your punishment." He stalked over to his nephew slowly. Harry stood there paralyzed by fear. He couldn't move as his uncle drew back a fist and punched him in the jaw. He spun around and crashed against the side of the kitchen counter. There was a sharp pain in his chest to match the dull throb of his head. He looked down to see the knife had stabbed a few millimeters into his chest, right on the solar plexus, right into his scar. Dazed as he was, he thought he saw a strange blue glow reflected on the blade of the knife, and the grating feeling of something hard where the knife was pressed. Vernon paused for a second as his nephew was sprawled on the counter. He couldn't see the knife as it was under the freak's body. Oh well, he thought. If he gets seriously damaged, the old freak can just patch him up again like always. With that final thought, he brought his right fist back and smashed it into the boy's back. Throwing all of his weight behind it, he heard a satisfying crunch that usually accompanied a broken bone, though slightly different than normal, more like shattered glass before everything started to go wrong. Harry felt the impact and of his uncle's fist and felt the knife still pressed against his hand pierce through the hardness in his chest. Expecting the world to go black and resigning himself to his fate, finally getting the release he wanted, he was surprised when the world instead went blue. There was a cracking and shattering sound before blue light shot out from his chest in a wave, knocking his uncle back and nearly blasting Harry off his feet. The pain then grew intense as he felt several sharp slivers like knives pierce him from the inside out, emanating from the knife wound in his chest. Another blast of blue and the knife shot out of his chest and embedded itself in the wall. This time Harry was knocked off his feet, but he didn't fall, and his uncle was sent sprawling out into a hallway as a wind began whipping around the inside of the kitchen. Harry seemed suspended in mid-air as another blast of blue energy shot out of him, and the objects around him started to melt, fizz, crack and bubble as the wind grew stronger and whipped around his body, swirling everything around him in a maelstrom of chaos. With the latest wave of blue energy, Harry's mind felt afire. He threw his head back and screamed as memories forcibly flooded into his head, memories of all of his escape attempts. Every time he'd run away and the old man with a stick would find him and bring him back, before telling him it was time to forget. Then came the memories of his last escape attempt. The old man had caught him and then said something to his uncle when he'd been brought back, something about failing wards, keeping him here and a different solution. The man had pulled out a small blue stone from beneath his cloak, at which his uncle nodded and told him to get on with it. The old man had leaned down and Harry couldn't move. Only his eyes seemed to obey him as he watched the old man mumble some words and scratch a shape into the rock before pointing his stick at Harry's chest. Suddenly a gash appeared in his chest and the old man pushed the stone into him and muttered another word, which closed the skin over the small lump. "There we are now, just to make it look like a scar, and it's time to forget Harry." After that there were more memories, more recent ones of the old man coming back and removing the, now painful, stone from his chest and replacing it with a new one, before making him forget again. The first time he had muttered something about, "Sooner than I thought, even with the bindings, powerful too, should be very interesting." As the memories ended, a final double wave of blue burst from Harry's chest. The first healed his recent injuries, including the bruising and scars covering his body. The second erupted before withdrawing back into him and seemed to inflate him slightly. He filled out and no longer looked like a starved runaway. He didn't look like a perfectly healthy child either, but the majority of his ills had been fixed. As the glow settled down and his skin regained its usual color, the force that held him up dissipated and he dropped the 2 foot back to the floor. The wind surrounding him died down and he looked around. The kitchen and most of the ground floor was a shambles. All of the appliances seemed to have half melted, half exploded. The paint and wallpaper had been stripped from the walls, revealing bare bricks and mortar. Anything light and not tied down was strewn in a circle around him, and most of the doors, pictures and other breakable objects were smashed beyond recognition. Some things appeared to have vanished entirely, and somehow a pair of rabbits, a fox and a small hamster had appeared inside the piles of wreckage. Looking out through the doorway, he could see his uncle staring at him in a mixture of shock and outrage from his position sprawled at the base of the stairs. His aunt was stood on the stairs and looked like she was about to faint or be sick. He couldn't tell. Dudley was watching him from behind the banister with a mixture of fear and awe in his 7-year-old eyes. Harry's eyes filled with hate as he stared at what remained of his so-called family. As he found the staircase, gave a groan before completely collapsing with a mighty smash, burying his uncle, dropping his aunt and cousin and destroying his room. He was shocked at the display of power, but before he could react in any way, he heard and felt a disturbance in the air behind him. Turning quickly, not wanting to be surprised and taken down by the old stick man, he saw two people dressed in very strange clothes he didn't recognize. The first spoke up quickly and his voice had an odd accent to it. The words sounded forced and not entirely natural as he said, "Peace, Harry Potter-san, we have no wish to harm you. We are here to take you away from this place." His hair was a dirty blonde, almost straw-like color, tied back in a ponytail and kept out of his eyes by a cloth strap with a metal plate on the front. He wore a black top with a green flak jacket and a flowing red sleeveless coat over the top and metal bracers on his forearms and the back of his hands. His long black trousers ended in sandals that left his toes and most of the top of his feet bare. His companion looked half asleep as he spoke. He had black hair tied into a spiky bun and a short black goatee on his chin. His face was scarred and he dressed in a fishnet shirt, with the same green flak jacket but with a brown furry overcoat, also sleeveless. He too wore long black trousers but had strange toe-less boots instead of sandals and spoke up when his companion had finished. "We've been tasked to take you away. Your little display has dropped the wards so we could finally get to you. We need to hurry though. That troublesome Dumbledore will no doubt be on his way to brainwash you again and reseal your powers." "Reseal? All this was me?" Harry asked, more shocked than anything. "When everything, is Dumbledore the old man with the glasses and a stick?" he asked, putting the thought of him destroying the house to the back of his mind. "Yes, he is. He's the one who put you here and won't let you leave. When your parents died they left us with the task of caring for you should anything happen to your godfather. You should never have come here. But he got to you before we found out about their deaths and left you to these people." The first man answered with a snarl at the last word. "We tried to get you out when the original wards failed but you had already left, and he got to you first. By the time we tracked you both back here, the new wards were already in place." Suddenly his explanations were cut off as a metallic crackling sounded from his and his partner's ear along with some words Harry couldn't understand. "We have to go, now. Our lookout has spotted the old man heading this way at speed. Please, Harry-san, will you come with us? If he sees us he will know where you have gone, and you will not be safe from him," the second man asked him, kneeling and holding out his hand to Harry. Smiling for the first time in as long as he could remember, he took the strange man's hand, figuring that anything was better than beatings, torture, and some strange old man's sick experiments. Smiling fondly, the dark-haired man said, "Great, not so troublesome after all. I'm Shikaku and this is Inoiki. We'll get out of here and meet up with Chuza, then take you to your new home." Harry felt a tug and a swirl of wind and he was suddenly outside at the park several streets away with the two men. After about a minute a new guy appeared. He had a mass of long spiky red hair and a white bandage over his forehead. He wore a black long-sleeved shirt under an armored plate with a red symbol on the front, and had forearm guards like Inoiki. He also wore long black pants and sandals but had a thick coiled belt with a brown apron-like flap that went down to his shins. He greeted Inoiki and Shikaku and was introduced to Harry as Chuza. "We're good. He hasn't followed us. He's still trying to undo all the stuff the little one did when he released his core. There must be a whole square mile of random destruction. Animated sundries and transformed items. There are squads on the way. We should be going before they begin sweeping the area." "Agreed, Harry-san. If you would climb onto my back, I shall carry you to our extraction point. It will be much quicker than walking." Inoiki, saying this, knelt down so that he could carry Harry piggyback style, nodding quickly, not wanting to be caught, and handed back to the Dursleys again. Harry climbed onto the man's back, with one final glance around them to make sure they weren't being watched. The three men and their charge disappeared in a gust of leaves. Several hours after his impromptu suicide attempt, Harry found himself in a hot, dry, and heavily forested land, staring up at the largest set of gates he had ever imagined. Looking left and right he saw the giant walls continuing in a slight curve away into the cleared-out forests on either side. Swallowing nervously, he followed his guards/rescuers past a booth where two young-looking guards watched them, or more specifically him, warily. There was a quick exchange of paperwork and some surprisingly friendly looks from the guards before they were waved through. When he asked about it, Chuza, who he'd come to like for his larger-than-life cheerfulness and general attitude, told him that his parents had been well liked here before they were killed. Killed? I was told they died drunk in a car crash, Harry responded without thinking. The three turned to look at him with shocked looks upon their faces. Shikaku growled angrily before violently stubbing out the cigarette he was smoking. Mendoka no. Apologies, but that is an insult to their memories. They died protecting you. They sacrificed themselves to protect you from a homicidal maniac who terrorized your country for years before that night. Oh, so they stopped him then? Harry asked, intrigued. This was the most he'd ever heard about his birth parents apart from the insults his uncle had spewed about them. No, Harry-san, you did. That's why you are so famous in your country. Did no one ever tell you? Chuza asked. What? That's crazy. I can't have. I must have been less than a year old. And I'm not famous. Oh no, I'm the wrong person. Look please, I'm sorry, I'll do anything. Just don't send me back there. Harry was panicking, his dream of escaping the Dursleys quickly fading out of his grasp. I'm sorry, please Harry-san, stop, Inoiki commanded firmly. Are you not Harry James Potter, son of James Potter and Lily Evans Potter? Harry nodded quickly, hope rekindling quickly despite his best efforts to suppress it. Did you not live at No. 4 Privet Drive, Little Whinging, Surrey, England, with your Aunt Petunia Evans Dursley, her husband Vernon Dursley, and their son Dudley Dursley? Harry nodded again. Finally, do you have a lightning bolt-shaped scar on your forehead? How do you know about that? Harry asked, bemused as he lifted his hand subconsciously to scratch the offending piece of tissue. Everyone knows about that. You got it when you beat. Shikaku began, then sighed. No, this isn't right. I had thought they would at least tell you a little about yourself and your parents. Screw protocol. The Hokage needs to know this now. Sorry, kid, but your questions are going to have to wait. We'll take you to our boss and he'll explain everything. Chuza, can you take him? Just because you're too lazy to do it yourself. Chuza murmured just loud enough for Harry to hear as he bent to lift the boy onto his back. Despite the situation, Harry had to suppress a smirk. The chubby man had been mocking Shikaku's laziness almost since they had left England, in English, to Harry's great amusement. Once Harry was secure, the group took off at high speed to the largest building around. It was a tall red tower, set against the backdrop of the cliff face that bordered one side of the village. Said cliff face had been carved and 4 dispassionate faces stared out across the entire village, keeping silent vigil, and Harry was reminded of the pictures he had seen of the Americans' MT Rushmore. As the party jumped from rooftop to rooftop at high speed, Harry pondered his current situation. Weird but definitely better than the Dursleys was his conclusion. No matter what happens, I just hope they let me stay. Learning this roof-running thing would be cool as well. Harry looked around the office he was in with wonder showing clearly in his eyes. He had been seated whilst his 3 escorts stood around the chair and supposedly reported his rescue to the old man sat behind a desk piled high with papers. Unfortunately, as they were speaking in something other than English, he couldn't understand a word that they were saying. He made out his own name and Bumblewatsits as well as Dursley, and what he was sure was a curse from the sideways look the old man had given him at its mention. His own blank look must have reassured the old man, whom, Harry had noted with interest, wore a strange ceremonial hat with a red symbol on the front. It was a cool hat, Harry decided, but it looked like it would get in the way a lot too. Maybe it was meant to get in the way so people couldn't see your face. Chuza was still talking, probably about his own part of the mission, and Harry let his attention wander over the rest of the stuff in the room. It was simply decorated, the desk being the biggest feature, but there were tapestries and scrolls hanging from the walls rather tastefully. His attention was drawn back to the desk and the monumental piles of papers stacked there. Looking closely, he could see a small orange corner sticking out of the bottom of one of the smaller piles. He leant closer and, when nobody seemed about to stop him, reached out and grabbed what appeared to be a small book. He flicked through a few pages, unable to read the mass of symbols and unable to find any pictures. It was then that he noticed the conversation had stopped, and all 4 men were looking at him. Sorry, he said quietly, putting the book back. It looked interesting, but I couldn't read it, and there weren't any pictures. At this, Chuza let out a loud, full-bellied guffaw before laughing himself silly. Shikaku chuckled quietly to himself whilst Inoiki tried to hide his grin. Harry turned to apologize to the old man but found him blushing sheepishly, and refusing to meet his eyes. Seeing the look of confusion and sadness on Harry's face, Hiruzen Sarutobi decided to turn the topic of conversation away from his embarrassing find. So, I take it you don't speak Japanese either, Harry-san? he asked in Japanese. Seeing the blank look on Harry's face as he spoke, he turned to Shikaku, asking, I suppose getting one of you three to act as his translator for the foreseeable future would be too troublesome, wouldn't it? Turning to Inoiki as the dark-haired shinobi merely smirked at the joke, he asked, I may have a favor to ask of you, Inoiki. I think you can guess as to what it will be. However, I do not ask this lightly. Before you do anything, however, I wish you to talk to the boy, find out what he would like to do. If he wishes to stay, he will be put up for adoption from the civilian side of town. If he also wishes to become a ninja, then I may just have the perfect place for him. If he wants to leave, then we will escort him wherever he wishes to go. We owe his parents that much. Should he choose to become a ninja, he will need to be sent to the academy with this year's current intake, and I would ask you to perform the transference jutsu as well as setting him up at Naruto-kun's building. If not, then I leave it to your discretion, and he will either be placed in the orphanage or your team will escort him to his chosen destination. Report back later when you have an answer. Clear? Dismissed. The Hokage signaled them to leave with a wave of his hand, before turning back to the paperwork on his desk and sighing in frustration as the shinobi team with their young charge left his office. He was glad the team had finally managed to rescue the boy from his abusive relatives and the old man's manipulations, but for some reason he could tell the boy was going to play merry hell with his paperwork. Maybe it wasn't such a good idea to put him with the village's top prankster. Kami alone knew how much more paperwork Naruto's mischief alone had added to his pile. He thought for the 1000th time about getting an assistant to lighten his workload, but once again dismissed the idea. Too many important decisions had to be made. Too much vital information passed through his office to allow just anyone access to it. Plus, he still handled all of Naruto's paperwork and bank accounts, and he was sure most villagers would abuse the power and seek to harm the boy if they had access. Sighing again. I'm doing that a lot lately, he thought as he tackled the next stack of paper threatening to bury his desk. Petition for the public execution of Uzumaki Naruto? That's the third one this week, he thought ruefully. Denied. Request for Uzumaki Naruto to be placed into the ANBU route training program. Denied again. Sodding Danzo. Yep. It was definitely gonna be one of those days. Outside the Hokage Tower, Inoiki bade farewell to his two teammates and took Harry's hand, guiding the boy in the direction of the park where he liked to sit and cloud watch. Somehow his lazy-ass partner had gotten him stuck on the hobby. At least it provided him time to meditate and try and expand his family's jutsu. He looked at the boy walking beside him, who was taking in all the sights of Konoha's main market street. Slowing when they approached a bench, he sat down and motioned for Harry to do so as well. So, Harry, he began in English. Much to the boy's delight, the Hokage has looked quite favorably on your predicament. He's offering you a few choices. Firstly, let me tell you a bit about why he is doing so. As you may have guessed, you can do things that most others can't. So can Dumbledore, the old man with the stick and glasses. So could your parents. He noticed the boy's attention pick up even further at the mention of his family. Unfortunately, so too could the man who murdered them. When your parents and you went into hiding, Dumbledore approached the Hokage of the time and requested a team of ninja for protection duty. He sent my team. We spent most of a year with your parents and became fast friends. They were two of the greatest people I have ever known. On the night, all those years ago, when we failed in our duty, we managed to intercept the man and most of his squad. We got too caught up in the fight, and before we realized he had gone on to the house and left his minions to us, it was too late. As we finished off our final opponents, we heard a huge explosion rock the house where you were hidden. We were there in minutes, but it was too late. Your parents had gone, and we feared for you as well. We feared that two wonderful people and their child had been lost to our own carelessness. Inoiki's expression had darkened all the way through his telling of the tale, but his eyes lit up and seemed hopeful when he continued. But no, there you were, safe, sound, and still mostly asleep. We looked around, but the only sign of Voldemort we could find was a charred pile of clothes by your cot. You'd survived. Impossibly and against all precedent. You survived a killing curse with only that small scar to show for it. What was more, you'd somehow stopped the worst mass murderer in the history of your country, and all before you could even walk and talk. We nearly brought you back here then and there, but Dumbledore, our client, had sent a man to retrieve your family, and he appeared out of the fireplace, a giant of a man. He took you in his arms and started walking off into the night. We followed at a distance. We were still under contract to protect the Potter family, and that meant you. He met another man, a friend of your parents, who gave him his flying motorcycle before disappearing himself with a loud crack. After that, Following the pair of you became very difficult. But we eventually caught up with you as Dumbledore was laying you at the doorstep of your aunt's house. He did some of his magic then and set up a barrier around the house. We stayed a few weeks to make sure you were safe, but when we saw the conditions they kept you in, we were too late again to do anything about it. The barrier had taken hold, and we couldn't get past it. He looked down into the boy's eyes and tried his best to convey the regret he felt at his treatment. We reported back here by messenger bird and the Hokage set up a rotational watch on the house. He said that Konoha had failed your family, and he'd be damned if it couldn't at least make amends to you. Since then the wards dropped only twice. Once just over a year ago, but the team on duty was too slow to get to you in time. The second time was yesterday, when you unleashed their power into that vortex. Returning to the topic at hand, he placed a hand on the boy's shoulder, out of respect for your parents, and to go some way towards repaying for our failure. The Hokage is giving you the choice as to what you want to do. You are more than welcome to stay here or my team, and I have orders to take you to wherever you feel safest. Wherever you want to go, we will take you and set you up with a nice family. Wide, almost tear-filled eyes looked back at him as Harry answered, I don't know anywhere else other than Uncle Vernon's house, and I never want to go back there again, so I'd like to stay here please. I don't have any money, but I can cook and clean and I'm good at gardening and simple repairs. Don't worry, we won't treat you as a slave here. We will find you a family to take care of you. You won't need to work for your upkeep. You're barely 7 years old for Kami's sake. Inoiki exclaimed before realizing something and looking at the date on a newspaper discarded in an adjacent bin. By Kami, you are 7, aren't you? Today's your birthday, isn't it? I think so. I haven't really thought about it much before, Harry answered honestly. Thinking about his birthday only hurt because of how differently it was treated compared to Dudley's at the Dursley household. Once he'd gotten a piece of string. Last year he'd been allowed to play with one of Dudley's broken toys, a miniature train carriage, for 5 whole minutes before the boy had demanded it back out of spite. Inoiki picked up immensely at the news and declared, right, after we're done here we're getting you a cake. Actually, Chuza would probably be a better person to go to for a cake. We're getting you a present. Now, final little question. In this village we operate a ninja training and mission system which is our main form of income. As it turns out you are just the right age to join in with the first-year class in the academy, and the Hokage has offered you a place. What do you think? It's a tough life. There will be lots of hardships. It isn't for everyone and there is the very real possibility of death. There are some benefits to it too, such as great pay and a chance to travel all over the shinobi world, not to mention you learn some pretty cool stuff if you have the ability, and are willing to train. Can you teach me to run on the rooftops? Harry asked back with a mad grin on his face. Ha ha, oh kid, that's the least of what you could learn. If you want to see some really cool techniques I'll take you to see Hataki-san later. I guess that's a yes then? Yep, Harry replied grinning when his face suddenly fell. I know you said that I'm the right age to join the training school. But will they speak English there? He asked. That's something that Hokage-sama asked me to help with if you agreed. My family specializes in mind manipulation techniques. Specifically sending things from one mind to another, if you are willing. Then I can send you my understanding of our language. It's quite painful to have memories implanted directly into your brain as the brain isn't used to such treatment, and I will have some adverse effects from it as well. But it is quick and will allow you to better assimilate. Damn, I always struggle with that word. It'll let you adapt to this place in time to join the academy in a few weeks. Harry thought it over for a few seconds. He was used to pain by now, and it would be useful to know what everyone was saying around him. All in all, it would be worth the short, painful episode to cut down on months of learning a new language. Okay, let's do it, he grinned up at Inoiki. But then you owe me a cake. Inoiki laughed at the cheeky kid, glad he was finally coming out of his shell. Deal, kid. Now hold still and look into my eyes for a moment. Harry looked up at the blonde ninja's face as he heard him say what sounded like Shinten-sin and something else before his head exploded. Pain, pain, beyond pain, pure agony raced through his mind as fast as thought itself. Knowledge and understanding burnt and branded itself on the inside of his mind as the foreign language in all its intricacy suddenly became instinctual to him. When the feeling of his brain burning from the inside out settled to that of a dull throb of his, now too loud, heartbeat, Harry opened his eyes again. Crap on a stick, that hurt, he exclaimed, clutching his head in his hands, almost falling off the bench he was sitting on in the process. Turning to his right, he looked at Inoiki, who was massaging his own scalp. Ugh, I'm never gonna get used to that, Harry heard him mutter. Something struck a chord with the way he spoke, though. It didn't seem right for some reason. Are you okay? He asked the man. Yeah, fine. It's just gonna take me a while to recover my chakra reserves after that. It's a pretty energy-intensive technique. Thankfully, I don't think I've lost any memories in the transfer, was the reply he got. Once again, something about what was being said didn't seem right to Harry. He understood him perfectly, but it was like what he was saying didn't match up with what he heard in his head. What happened? Did the technique work? It hurt like hell. Well, if the facts that you can understand what I'm saying now and that you keep switching languages halfway through sentences are any indication, then I'm gonna have to say yes. Inoiki replied with a small smirk despite his continued headache. Having to figure out half of what his charge was saying didn't help. Eh? What are you talking about? Harry asked, confused. Am I really speaking in two languages at once? Not at once, a few words of each, one after the other. It's something you're gonna have to work on during the next 2 weeks before you start at the academy. Don't worry, you'll get used to it soon enough. Then you should be able to tell which you're speaking and listening to given enough practice. You'll have to learn how to read and write our language. But with the speaking part down, it shouldn't be too difficult. Anyway, that's getting ahead of ourselves. Come on, let's show you where you'll be staying. The Hokage should have let your new roommate know to expect us by now. With that, Inoiki stood up and, taking the boy's hand, guided him to one of the small apartment complexes in the quieter side of the village. Naruto had been having a rather crappy day. Even by his own poor standards, he'd been kicked out of yet another shop, trying to get some halfway decent groceries for once. Cries of "demon brat" had followed him down the street as he dodged rotten vegetables and other projectiles hurled his way. Being honest with himself, he wouldn't go back there again even if they turned around and begged him. Any shop that kept that many inedible and necrotic foodstuffs within easy access was to be avoided in his opinion. Depressed once again, he resigned himself to another week of Ichiraku ramen. Not that he minded, of course. That stuff was heaven in a bowl. But it would have been nice to have a bit of variety for once. Deciding to cheer himself up, he headed home for some pranking supplies. ANBU headquarters had been getting lax in their security lately, as he hadn't pranked them in a few weeks. Time to show them just what a demon can do if they're not careful, he thought with a sadistic grin on his face. He was just approaching the door to his building when he spotted the Sandaime Hokage just turning the corner at the end of the street. Aji-san, he called his customary greeting, at which the old man smiled. Hello, Naruto, he replied. I come bearing good news. Yeah, well, I wish you'd come bearing good food, but I suppose it'll have to do, came the cheeky comment. Stiffed at the shops again? The old man asked with a scowl on his face. I'm sorry, Naruto, but if I showed you any more preferential treatment than I do now, the council would likely force me to retire again. Meh, it's okay, you already set me up with a room and spending money. Anything else is just extra. Besides, when I take that hat off you, they'll have to treat me better. He finished with his usual grin. So, what's the good news? The Hyugas finally accept my proposal about experimental propriety-stick removal surgery? You're the one who keeps sending those in? You do realize that I have to read all proposals out in front of the entire council, don't you? Asked the shocked Hawk. Ah, then you might want to find the one labeled Emo Kid Distribution Program, Uchiha Relocation Project, and remove it before this week's meeting. I thought they'd just give you and your secretaries a laugh. Didn't mean to embarrass you in front of the council. It's fine, some of us get a kick out of them. Sim in particular loves them and is still trying to figure out who it is that sends them in. They really brighten up a dreary meeting, I'll make you a bet. If you can come up with one that makes Aburaim or Hyuga clan heads laugh before next week's meeting, I'll treat you to a night at Ichiraku's. He grinned as his young charge's face lit up in joy. Now, for the real reason I came to see you. We have a new resident in the village, and unless I am much mistaken, he will agree to join the academy this year with your starting class. His name is Potter Harry, and if you're willing, he's to be your roommate for the foreseeable future. What do you think? Naruto took a while to process the information and think things over before asking. Does he know how the villagers treat me? Not yet, though I'm sure he'd learn eventually on his own. I thought it would be best if you were to tell him yourself, he said kindly as he put a comforting hand on the boy's shoulder. Now, as he is currently unable to read and write our language, I'll be sending over a few scrolls you can use to tutor him before the start of classes. Seeing the boy's expression quickly sour at the thought of it, he quickly added, though 1 or 2 might be of the chakra control and jutsu variety, just so he knows their format and can get some practice in outside of class. Watching Naruto's face brighten again made the old man chuckle. He couldn't be seen openly helping the demon get stronger, even if it was with some minor jutsu or exercises that most clans taught their children before they entered the academy anyway. However, it would be remiss of him to not offer assistance to a potential new addition to the village. This way he could at least help the boy out discreetly without losing his position. Damn the council and their vote of no confidence threats. There's no telling what my replacement would do if they went through with them. Probably accept the execution orders or route requests. Either way, I'd never see him again. Anyway, Harry-san should be coming around sometime this afternoon with Yamanaka and Oiki. If I could ask you to put any mayhem you have planned on hold until then, it'd be much appreciated. Sure thing, Aji-san. I'll take care of Harry-san for you. See you around. He called as the Hokage turned to make his way back to his office, stopping off for a quick lunch at a dango bar on the way. Wonder what he'll be like. It'll be nice to have someone other than Aji-san. Tuchi-san and I am Michin to talk to, plus he can help me with pranks, he thought with a slight evil smile on his face as he made his way up to his apartment, making sure to dismantle the traps he'd set up along the way. It wouldn't have been a great idea to injure his new roommate before he'd even met him, would it? Gonna have to teach him the tricks of the trade, well, at least enough not to get killed on his way into the apartment. Probably how to sneak about too, then we can wreak double the havoc. I'm gonna have to stock up on smoke bombs and stink pellets soon, especially if I'm gonna be Harry-san's new pranking instructor Yash. Instant ramen time. It had been 3 years since Harry had arrived in Konohagaku no Sato, and to say that either had been changed by his arrival would be an understatement. Harry in particular had undergone a dramatic shift from when he had first entered the village as a half-starved and timid boy. He now stood at 4 feet 4 inches high, slightly taller than most his age in the village, and had filled out nicely, wiry and fast. He was the perfect build for a stealthy and quick ninja in training. He stood proud and confidently on the roof of the Konoha Academy, dressed in his usual gray muscle shirt under a light brown jacket, his muted green trousers tucked into a pair of gray toe-less shinobi boots. Next to him stood his roommate and best friend Naruto Uzumaki, wearing his trademark orange jumpsuit, navy blue toe-less boots and goggles keeping the hair off of his forehead. They were looking out over the village they had called home as civilians for the past 3 years, ready to call it home as ninja that afternoon, for today was the day of the graduation exam. Physically there was nothing much different about the village in question. It just so happened that the number of shinobi patrolling or otherwise just being visible out on the streets had nearly doubled, and those that were out seemed permanently on edge, always glancing over their shoulders, furtively checking every alley or doorway they passed. The civilians and off-duty shinobi forces on the other hand seemed quite relaxed and laid back. Some even seemed to watch the on-duty forces out of the corners of their eyes as they passed them on the streets. The reason for this was the 2 pranksters who stood atop the academy waiting to open up a new chapter in their lives. After Naruto had introduced Harry to the subtle art and science that is pranking, the 2 had declared a prank war on the ANBU of Konoha as well as the Council of Advisors. It hadn't really been so bad until they had started trying to outdo each other, which had in turn sparked their frequent comedy movie marathons looking for inspiration, which had also led to the horrific Trojan Bunny incident. But no one spoke of that anymore nor ever would again. Even then it still wasn't truly terrible until the 2 had cottoned on to the theory behind seals, more accurately, the seals behind explosive notes, as those were the only ones taught to academy students. Even the ninja section of the Konoha library had only sparse and basic information on seals other than explosive notes, or storage seals, and those seemed to be locked up in the jounin-only section. Still the boys were not deterred. 30 new variations and modifications of the notes later, from minor low-powered explosions to the fear-inducing manure bombs. The 2 had found a niche in the pranking circuit, and were close to giving Senior Chunin heart attacks on a near-weekly basis. Naruto turned to his friend with a grin. So, final prank as civilians, eh? Yep, might as well go out with a bang. Who knows when we'll have time in between awesome missions to really put the effort in anymore, agreed his raven-haired colleague. Anywhere in particular I should be looking? There might be something interesting off towards the southeast happening soon, and myself? Personally, I've always liked watching the comings and goings around the Hokage Tower this time of day. Southeast Hyuga or Nara? Who am I kidding? What fun is it pranking a Nara? Just as he finished talking there was a commotion from the direction the black-haired boy was looking. Pulling out a set of field binoculars from his jacket's inner pocket, he got a close-up of several civilians running out of the council chambers of the Hokage Tower covered in a black substance, cursing, spitting and yelling like crazy, exploding inkwells. Nice, very sneaky. I'm always saying, if I can sneak in wearing this orange monstrosity, then something needs to be done about security. But do they listen? No, the great thing about this prank though is that it isn't just a one-hit wonder. It will happen again and again whenever the subject of boom. What was that? I nearly missed it then. Hand me those binoculars for a second, would you? Harry grinned and handed them over. Whilst lacking the subtle sneakiness Naruto's plans often involved, he loved to fall back on the bigger is better school of thought, especially when it came to explosions. Is that? No way, you got the paint seal to work? Naruto asked as he saw a dense, colored mist settle over the Hyuga clan compound. Yep, only in pink at the moment though. And it still uses far too much chakra in my opinion. Speaking of colors, I can't believe never thought to ask this until now, but why do you always wear orange if you hate it so much? Well, it used to be that it was the only thing that I could get the stupid shopkeepers to sell me. But then I realized something about the color orange. First, it makes it damn hard to sneak anywhere, making it more of a challenge, like taijutsu training with weights on. Secondly, if you look at it too long it starts to give you a migraine, not making it aesthetically a good choice. But if I were to get in a really long fight I'd take any chance, slim as it may be, for an advantage, even an orange-induced migraine. Oh, so it's nothing to do with the fact that Hinata-chan gave you a set for your birthday one year, and you've been wearing the same thing ever since? Teased Harry. Bugger off, come on, let's get inside before the ANBU come looking for us again. The slightly blushing Naruto turned and made his way inside, off the roof, followed by a grinning Harry. Before long the two were ensconced in their usual seats at the back of the second-floor classroom. They were just debating the finer points of each other's pranks when Irika and Mizuki, the two senseis for the class, walked in looking disgruntled and slightly haggard. Settle down! Irika yelled at the noisy classroom, his head seeming to double in size from the force of his yell and glare combo. That's gotta be some kind of seal-less genjutsu, Harry thought as he watched his sensei staring down the Sasuke fan club who looked ready to fight when they saw only one available seat next to the object of their obsession. A short scuffle later and a dark-haired civilian girl managed to claim the seat, much to the displeasure of the rest of the group, and Irika turned to Mizuki, signaling him to start the register. Just as he got to Nara, Shikamaru, the classroom door was opened by an ANBU wearing a bear-style mask. Apologies, Teacher-san, may I ask for a moment of your time? He asked in a deep, growling voice. Of course, ANBU-san, relied Irika before following the man out into the hallway. Mizuki continued on with the register with barely a pause. He was nearly finished when Irika's raised voice could be heard muffled through the walls. You think Irika-sensei's in trouble? Naruto asked Harry with a slight hint of worry to his voice. He did come in looking worse for wear, so did Mizuki though. So if it was anything to do with that they'd both be outside. It could be about a student, though that'd be pretty unlikely unless anyone's done something to piss off the Hokage or the council in the past few days. Crap, we're so dead, aren't we? Possibly we could escape, but that'd just make us look guilty. We are guilty. They can't prove that yet. If we run, it gives them an excuse. I say we go along with the ANBU when they eventually do come to take us away. We haven't touched their HQ in weeks, so they might go easy on us. Then we prank the hell out of them when their backs are turned. The blonde's face lit up with an evil smile, making him look more feral and crazy than Harry had ever thought possible. You've been practicing that in the mirror, haven't you? Harry asked with an amused grin. Shut it was the only response he got before the door opened once more to admit Irika as well as the bare-masked ANBU. Potter, Harry, and Uzumaki Naruto, the ANBU announced whilst Irika stood with an angry frown still plastered on his features. You have been officially summoned to stand trial before the council. As such, you are unable to participate in the genin exams or ninja training of any kind until the matter is dealt with. Please come with me. With that, he turned and left the room to wait expectantly out in the hallway. Shrugging to themselves and passing the still fuming Irika, they left the classroom. Looking around the hallway outside the classroom, they saw only the bare-masked ANBU waiting for them. Unable to control himself, Naruto spoke up. Only one of you to collect the pair of us? I think we're being insulted, don't you, Harry-kun? Well, we have given most of the ANBU tracking squads a good run for their money several times in the past. However, that has always been when we have been caught doing something we shouldn't. As Bear-san is the only one here to bring us, and I can only assume that there is in fact no or very limited actual proof to link us to whatever might have happened whilst we were in class. Very astute young one, commented the ANBU. I have in fact been tasked to apprehend you because there have been some unusual seals used against our esteemed council and the family of one of its members. Naturally, your previous pranks and known targets have led the council to immediately suspect the two of you, and I volunteered to be the one to collect you. Now, if you would be so kind, we are expected in the council chambers. With that, the trio departed the building and made their way to the Hokage Tower. When they arrived at the Hokage Tower, the three made their way to the large ornate doors on the ground floor that marked the entrance to the council chambers. They parted ways with the ANBU, wishing them luck. As they were about to go in, Harry turned to the man and asked him, "Why are you being so friendly to us?" causing him to stop and turn to face the pair of them. "You two have yet to get me with one of your pranks, and I have to admit, they are extremely funny when you aren't the subject of them. Except for he said, finishing with a shudder at the memory. The two boys looked slightly depressed as regret and shame passed over their faces at the mention of the TBI Trojan Bunny incident. However indirect, this quickly passed, and the two, after final goodbyes, turned as one, opened the doors and stepped through to meet the council. As they did so, the bare-masked ANBU disappeared with a pop in a cloud of smoke. Hiruzen Sarutobi was having a rather poor day. Paperwork was, once more, getting out of hand, and some had even spread itself onto chairs and the floor. He missed the morning's council meeting to get a good start on it. The meeting was only the weekly one anyway. Nothing of import would be discussed until the bi-monthly meeting the following week, so he could afford to be lax and allow the council to run the village's day-to-day affairs. It wasn't until the ANBU he'd assigned to be Harry and Naruto's watcher made his presence known that he allowed himself to look up from his workload. "What is it, Bear-kun?" he asked, already fearful of the answer. "Hokage-sama, the council have summoned Uzumaki-san and Potter-san to appear before them. They are to be tried for willful assault of many of the council members and of the Hyuga clan. I volunteered to escort them. My clone should be nearly there by now, if not on its way back." "What happened?" quickly he ordered as he stood, rapidly putting away his paperwork and donning his more official regalia in preparation for the council meeting. The two decided to play one last prank apiece as civilians. One caused the inkwells in the council chambers to explode, covering the council members in the substance, whilst the other planted some kind of paint bombs all over the Hyuga estate, coloring them and their residents a bright pink at the time of detonation. The Hokage had to stop for a second as he was putting on his hat as the mental image of what was just described passed through his consciousness. Shaking himself out of his mental stupor, he strode quickly out of his office and began taking the stairs down to the council chambers two at a time. When did the bombs go off? At 8:55, almost simultaneously. Whilst the two were in the academy waiting for their graduation exams to start, witnesses put them entering at 8:47 and not leaving until I collected them, the ANBU stated with precision, having received the information his clone obtained from Irika when it had dispelled, seconds before, no concrete evidence against them, aside from their known penchant for explosions and hatred of the council and Hyugas in general. No, we cannot be sure of their guilt unless a witness comes forth. They admit their guilt, or we have a Yamanaka take a look at them. Either way, the council will probably decide to string out the questioning for as long as possible so as to prevent the two from taking their genin examinations today. If you will forgive my impertinence, Hokage-sama, you are forgiven. Sarutobi sighed at the truth of the man's words as the pair approached the council chamber doors. Did the two exhibit any signs of guilt when your clone picked them up? No, sir, they have become skilled at hiding their emotions behind a mask of indifference and humor. They did seem annoyed that I was the only one sent to escort them, claiming it was an insult to their reputations to have only a single shinobi sent after them. Smiling, the Hokage dismissed the ANBU and, after rearranging his robes, made his grand entrance to try and at least spare the boys an undeservedly harsh punishment. Naruto was bored. It was hard to concentrate on what these dry and dull old men were talking about, even if it was his own punishment. Ajianesa's grand entrance had been a high point, but it had quickly turned to dull and tedious debate. When he became Hokage, he'd probably get rid of this stupid fussy lot of asses that seemed to do little but argue. His interest perked up a bit as the Hokage ordered silence. "Right," he began. "I believe it is time for a vote, or else we'll be here all day. If we haven't already, the choices are: should this council find the two guilty of assault of members of this council, and their families the two shall be fined the appropriate amount to reimburse those offended, and shall be given no less than 48 hours of community service to undo the damage they have caused to the Hyuga residences. However, given the nature of said crimes, they shall also be inducted into Konoha's shinobi ranks as genin for demonstrating impressive degrees of stealth, planning, teamwork and skill in Fuinjutsu. Should the council find the two not guilty, they shall be released, their names cleared, and they shall be compensated for being forced to miss their genin exams to the extent of a semester's tuition at the academy each. Excuse me, Hokage-sama, if I may interject, came the voice of Danzo after the cries of outrage and indignation had died down. The man was, as always, swathed in bandages all up his right-hand side, and his calm and measured presence always set Sarutobi's teeth on edge thinking about the calculating and semi-treasonous mind underneath. I believe the majority of us find these terms to be somewhat lax and disproportionate, as this is merely a matter of childhood delinquency. Could we not leave the punishment up to the guardians of the accused and those aggrieved? The man smirked. If this was agreed upon, then as the boys had no guardians and were officially emancipated, though under control of the state, they would have to answer before over half the council and the entire Hyuga clan themselves. Fine, this third option shall also be included in the vote, announced the Hokage with a weary voice, praying that the ruse would work. Naruto had, unawarely at least, set up the perfect trap for this eventuality not 2 weeks previously. Aji-san! The hyperactive blonde yelled in greeting as he barged into the Hokage's office, causing the old man to smile warmly at the boy who plopped down into a seat in front of him without being asked. After all those hours of seeing the false deference and respect he got from council members who would twist his orders and laws to their own agendas given any leeway, the honest familiarity and impropriety Naruto practically exuded was a welcome balm for his soul. Greetings, Naruto-kun. To what do I owe the pleasure? I was wondering about Harry actually. Oh, nothing wrong between you, I hope? Nah, nothing like that. It's just, well, neither of us has anybody. Well, we haven't had much luck on the whole family side of things. I know something went wrong with his relatives at his old place, but he doesn't like to talk about it much. Says he got away from them and he's happy to let it stay that way. I'm sorry, Naruto, but if he doesn't want to tell you, then... No, you've got me all wrong, Aji-san, the blonde had protested. It's nothing like that. I was just thinking that, since I don't have a family, and he doesn't have a family, that the two of us together could, You want to adopt Harry-kun? Yeah, that's the word I was looking for. So, can I do it, Aji-san? I want to surprise him with it when we pass out of the academy. That's quite thoughtful of you, Naruto-kun. I'll see about setting this up for you if you want. Cheers, Aji-san. I knew I could rely on you. Naruto yelled as he hopped up off of his seat and made his way out of the door. Sarutobi smirked to himself as he dug around in his desk for a set of clan adoption papers with a wicked grin on his face at how much trouble the blonde had inspired him to cause. As the votes were tallied, it seemed to Danzo that his plan, of which he had informed many of the council secretly before the Hokage had arrived and he had to stop, was going to go off without a hitch. Soon he'd be able to get his hands on the demon brat's power. Then he'd show the old man how wrong his will of fire was. He'd be able to make Konoha truly great and unquestionably powerful once again. His emotionless mask almost slipped as the council voted majority on his option, with a few ninja as well as the Hokage voting for punishment and instatement into the genin ranks. Sarutobi also almost let his expressions shift from weary annoyance as the votes were counted. Seeing Danzo's plan coming to fruition, he decided that the trap was prime for springing. As a side note, he spoke up, all the while glancing at Naruto and giving him a subtle smirk. Would Potter-san please come up here for a second? Seeing no reason not to, Harry made his way quickly up to stand before the Hokage, who produced a set of papers from inside his robes. We were going to wait until you had passed the genin exams to do this, but now is as good a time as any. Would you sign these, please? Harry nodded quickly and signed the papers where indicated, trusting the old man implicitly, and already seeing Naruto's signature on the papers sealed the deal for him. What is this, Hokage-sama? Asked one of the civilian council members. Just a triviality, really. Naruto has expressed his wish to adopt Harry-kun here into his family. Harry paused at this, shock clearly evident on his face as he turned to look at the grinning Naruto, and then back to the kind smile of the Hokage. He almost welled up from the joy that burst out of his chest as he finished signing the papers. I take it no one objects? Hiruzen continued, Looking out over the faces of the council members and even offering the paperwork for them to look over, they all muttered a negative response. The boys would soon be punished anyway. What did it matter if the two were related? In that case, as witnessed by this council and with no objections raised, I hereby induct Potter Harry into the Uzumaki clan of Konoha as Uzumaki Harry, with all rights and obligations that this entails. Some members of the council, primarily the shinobi members, were quickly picking up on the emphasis on the clan part of the speech, as this official meeting of the council has no objections to this. Having been offered the chance to peruse the paperwork and to vote against the action, the last surviving members of the Uzumaki clan has now officially been inducted into Konoha as a new clan under Konoha bylaw. Due to the presence of the Uzumaki bloodline and the Potter bloodline within the clan is to be given a small, unoccupied compound befitting their size for private use and housing. As the members are underage, I as the Hokage assume the duties as clan head in an official capacity until one of the two reaches the rank of Jounin, or the age of 25, whichever comes first. The uproar this caused did not die down for almost quarter of an hour as the various clans and civilians of Konoha made their protests known. The real sticking point was made by Haruno Asuka when she protested that a clan could not be made with only two people. Once Hiruzen pointed out they had made the precedent with the Uchiha child in order to allow him to keep his clan compound, the civilian councilmen quietened down rather quickly. When the smaller points were shot down, the only protest left was that many would not accept that Naruto could potentially become a clan head and part of the council. The Hokage's grin turned almost feral at this. Given the law that forbids speaking directly about this, I shall allow a small circumvention this one time. Are you saying that those in Naruto's condition should be banned from being members of this council? You believe that any person acting as a container in such a way should be banned from becoming a clan head? He gave Naruto a look that promised to talk later as the room filled with affirmative cries. Very well, the Hokage turned to the council once more. If you can convince the Aburame clan to step down from the council, as they are all in an identical situation with their bugs, I shall declare it an official law of Konoha that anyone containing a non-human entity, willingly or not, is barred from becoming a clan head and member of the Council of Konoha. Needless to say, an angry buzzing deterred anyone from taking this further. No takers then? In that case, request denied. Now, back to the issue at hand. As acting Uzumaki clan head, I believe that the nature of the boys' punishments falls under my jurisdiction, so the two will spend 48 hours doing community service for the offended parties, cleaning up the mess at the Hyuga clan compound as well as cleaning all the clothes of this council sullied by the ink explosion earlier. Now, if there are no other issues to deal with, the two are dismissed and I call for a recess. Kami knows we've been in here too long for my liking. At this the council disbanded and exited the building, all in various states of outrage, humiliation, respectfulness and amusement, the last two more prevalent in the more relaxed shinobi members. Throughout the whole thing, from the moment the Potter boy had become an Uzumaki, Danzo sat stunned in his chair. The sheer shock at the Hokage's manipulations had thrown him completely. He realized that he had, for the first time in a long while, underestimated his old colleague. The professor is passive no longer was the rather sobering thought running through his head as he quickly rose and left the chambers. Plans would need to be reevaluated, loose ends tied up, tracks covered and, most importantly, security increased. The debate had raged for hours. Now that the two could see outside again, Harry and Naruto realized just how much time had passed. It was easily 3 o'clock, meaning the exams would be finished and the academy closing for the day. Just as their moods were about to drop, they heard the Hokage telling them to follow him as he swept past in his formal robes. Harry-kun, Naruto-kun, I realize that the two of you may have a lot of questions as to what happened back in there, but I'd like to ask you to hold on to them for now. I can't explain everything to you now, but I will later, I promise. I would have preferred to keep the information a secret until you had reached Chunin, Naruto-kun. But I think now I shall tell you once you pass your genin exams and get placed on a team. Now, enough talk of secrets and council manipulations. How'd you like to see your new house? Or what? All clans are entitled to a compound on which to build their homes, and there just so happens to be an old, unused compound not far from the Naras. Since they are easy to get on with and you two need a better place than that dingy old apartment now that you are an official clan, I filed the paperwork to transfer it to your name once you became an official clan about a week ago. So, we own a house now? Harry asked. Yes, and the land it's on and a stretch of the forest behind it as well. Hiruzen grinned at the enthusiastic boys. Come on, let me show you the place and then you can get your stuff and get settled. The takeover of the newly dubbed Uzumaki compound had gone well. First the Hokage had channeled some chakra into the gate to open it. Then Naruto had simply first had to bind the house to his blood at some special seal on the gate. Then he and Harry had to both bind their blood over a second seal that appeared below the first to ensure the grounds recognized the pair of them. Harry thought it was a bit excessive. Whoever the old owner was, he had apparently gone out of his way to keep the place secure. Security seals of this complexity had to have been expensive, even if the grounds weren't that big. The Hokage had given them a quick tour of the house, a modest 3-story detached affair with a decent-sized garden leading into some woodland at the back. Well, it was modest compared to the other clan compounds. The Uchiha place was massive, and even that wasn't as bad as the overly affluent and rubbing-it-in-your-face Hyuga buildings. The more personal of the past owner's possessions had been removed by the Hokage years ago, when the man had apparently died without leaving an heir or left the village or something. Still, the house was fully furnished, if a little dusty, and he and Naruto had both loved the place immediately. Even if he still couldn't rightly justify why the village kept bits of woodland inside the walls untouched by buildings, the Hokage explained that it was something to do with the Shodaime building Konoha in a single night, but it all seemed a little far-fetched to him. Later that evening, the two were on their way back from Ichiraku's after celebrating their new official brotherhood and eating their fill. The pair were slowly making their way towards their new house, and it was on the way that they ran into their sensei. Naruto-kun, Harry-kun, wait up a second. They heard from behind them and turned to see the Chunin jog towards them from down the street. Konbanwa, Mizuki-sensei, looks like we're gonna be in your class a little longer, grinned Harry. Even the fact that they would have to remain in the academy until the next round of examinations wasn't enough to bring the boy down now that he had a decent family for once. Actually, that is what I wanted to talk to the two of you about. I heard about how you two nearly got made into genins because of the skill you showed in pranking the Hyuga and the council. I want to give you guys a chance to prove yourselves once again. Listen, think of this as a special exam. You don't want to be stuck in the academy whilst all your friends go off to form ninja teams, do you? Seeing that he had their rapt attention, he pulled the two closer, conspiratorially lowering his voice. I can technically still promote you as it's still the day of the examinations, but I can't be seen to play favorites. Or I could get kicked out of the academy. I still need to see you guys display proficiency in 3 areas: theory, jutsu and either stealth, taijutsu or shuriken jutsu, knife or shuriken throwing. Pranking the council room was good, but apparently not enough, so here's my plan. You guys need to aim higher, the highest. You need to do something that'll force the council to recognize my decision. You prank the Hokage. This is so easy, they're falling for it hook, line and sinker. Now, if you can break into the Hokage tower and bring back proof of it, that'd be enough for the stealth and planning parts, but there's still the jutsu part, and you really should go all out on it. Not just the same old 3 from the academy. There's a scroll in the Hokage's office called the Forbidden Scroll. It contains some of, if not all of the most powerful jutsu known to the village. If you guys could get in there, get the scroll and learn one of the jutsu out of it each, then there's no way the council could overrule me passing the two of you. He turned, smiling at the faces of the 2 boys, and began to walk away. I'll be at training ground 17 at 11:30. That gives you over 5 hours. If you can show me a cool jutsu each and a scroll when I arrive, then well, more genin for Konoha. Several hours later at training ground 17. It's a trap. We can't learn jutsu of this magnitude. Would you shut up with the Star Wars references? Please? Great anger, I sense in you, on the path to the dark side. You are becoming a whiny little bitch, you are, I sense. Whack-ow, you bastard! Look, shut up, Yoda, or else the ANB will find us before we finish learning these jutsu. How are you getting on anyway? Think I've nearly got this Kagebushin down. I keep making too many though. It says I should start off with 1 or 2 and build up from there, but I can't seem to make less than 10. How about you? Chakra projection is turning into a bit of a bitch, though I guess it'll be useful once I can learn more Fuinjutsu than just explosive tags. What time is it? 22:04. Keep practicing. We've only got about an hour left. Jal, main Capitan. Oh, good gods, what hit me? Harry moaned as he woke up, his head pounding like a jackhammer. Naruto, it's your turn to make breakfast. Healed as he opened his eyes to the sight of an unfamiliar ceiling. Where the hell? Oh, yeah, Naruto's. No, our house, he thought as the previous day's events caught up with him. They had been stupid enough to fall for the traitor's trick and had actually gone through with the bastard's plan. He probably hadn't counted on Irika showing up just before he did, or that they'd actually managed to learn any of the jutsu in the Forbidden Scroll. He'd been surprised as hell when Harry and Naruto had turned on him when he'd injured Irika. They were both quite shocked to hear about Naruto's furry little problem, but not enough for Mizuki to avoid having his ass handed to him by over 1,000 Naruto clones. Naruto hadn't been the only one to get a hit in with their new jutsu though. Projecting an explosive notes, seal knot to each of the Naruto clones who were piling on top of Mizuki had turned out to be a very bad idea. In hindsight, it turns out that each of the jutsu in the Forbidden Scroll was not only forbidden for being powerful, but also for being incredibly dangerous. Chakra projection and shadow clones were no exceptions. When an explosive note activates, chakra flows through the seals to manipulate it first into fire nature chakra, then into the end form of an explosion of varying magnitudes depending on the seals used. Harry and Naruto already knew this. Normal clones are chakra constructs that cannot affect the real world apart from in sight and sound unless an element of some kind is used to make them, i.e., wind, fire, earth, shadow, light or water. Harry and Naruto also already knew this. What they didn't know is that the ink in an explosive note consumes energy as it is burned away by the chakra passing through it, making it highly inefficient. Or that when a solid clone is destroyed, the memories it gathered during its lifespan are transferred to its creator. Much more so with shadow clones, which each have a form of eidetic memory. In short, chakra projection made each explosion several times more effective than anyone could have guessed, and Naruto had the memory of being blown up shoved into his head 1,000 times in rapid succession. Needless to say, neither the boy nor the clearing they were in fared any better for the experience. Mizuki was, fortunately, the only casualty of the night. Irika, though injured, was not severely wounded and quickly patched up by a medic Nin on the way back to the Hokage Tower. They had approached the Hokage once more that night, this time to beg forgiveness, and were informed that the Kyuubi was the secret he'd promised they would have been told once they reached Genin. With Irika's impromptu field promotion of the pair, which Hiruzen glad to back up and make official, the point was moot either way. Now they were lying in their new home, Genin of Konoha at last. Harry was surprised to feel no different than he had the previous day, despite the fact that, not only had his whole life changed, he had contributed in the killing of another human being the day before. He couldn't talk to Naruto about it, as he seemed to be having explosion flashbacks in his sleep in the next bed over, and he didn't have the heart to just wake him for no reason. Maybe if he had a bucket of water handy. But no, Harry was surprised that the two of them had continued to sleep in the same room. They had done so for years now due to necessity. Now that it was unnecessary in such a large house it seemed unthinkable and weird. Slowly rising, Harry stretched out his tired muscles and went in search of breakfast, before realizing that they had only just moved into the place. They didn't have anything to eat, and they'd been so caught up in other things last night that they'd forgotten to buy food. "It's Shiraka breakfast, here we come." After a grump, Naruto was roused and the pair had dressed. They made their way to the greatest food stand in all of Konoha. They arrived just in time to see Iam bringing a large pot to the boil behind the counter. "Ohio, Iam Ne-chan, 2 breakfast specials please." Naruto shouted in greeting, causing the older girl to turn. Her face was an emotionless mask as she regarded the 2 boys in front of her before smacking them each upside their heads with her ladle. "What the hell were you 2 doing last night? Half the village was up looking for you." "Oh, Naruto adopted me. The Hokage gave us a new house. We got tricked into stealing the Forbidden Scroll in the Hokage's office by our sensei. We each learned an awesome new jutsu. Found out that our sensei was a traitor to the village, so Naruto made 1,000 copies of himself to attack him, and I blew them, and him into a bajillion pieces. We both got our genin promotions and the pay for a B-rank mission for killing a rogue chunin and recovering village secrets. Naruto keeps having I got blown up 1,000 times flashbacks because his copy's memories came back to him all at once, and he's struggling to deal with it, and I'm concerned that I don't feel bad about killing my sensei. In fact, I don't really care that I ended another human's life. I should probably talk to someone about that sometime. How about you? How was your night?" Iam just stared at Harry for about 5 seconds before hitting him over the head again, then pulling him into a hug, saying he could talk to her as much as he wanted before congratulating them both on their promotion and first paycheck. "Now then, what was it you wanted? Breakfast specials?" she asked when the whole thing was over. moving quickly and with practiced ease to prepare their order. You want them to go? Academy starts soon, doesn't it? Harry checked his watch. Nah, we got plenty of TIA crap. Forgot to wind the stupid thing up again. What time is it? 9:15. Don't worry, these will only take another minute, then you can go. Consider them on the house. My treat for making genin. I smiled brightly at their thanks and insistence that they pay. Having received their B-rank pay, they had more money than either had ever had before and didn't want to accept charity anymore. A quick ladle to the head each soon quietened their protests, and they left a smirking IM with their free breakfasts wrapped up in small cardboard and napkin packaging to hurry towards the academy for their team assignments. Upon entering the classroom, the two quickly realized that there were a lot of passes this year. It seemed everyone from their class and the other one for their year had passed, and were all squeezed into the same room. Hey, what the hell are you two doing here? You didn't even take the test. This is for genin only, came the inevitable cry. From Kiba. Strangely enough, Harry would have put money on it being Sakura or Ino that yelled at them before realizing that the two weren't there. Maybe they failed? He thought before addressing the now silent room. Check out the Hittite, we passed, Naruto announced confidently before, once more taking it further than it needed to go. We didn't even need to take this stupid test. We just kicked a rogue Chunin's butt and here we are, genin with a high-ranked mission under our belts before we even get assigned our teams. Next stop, Hokage. Believe it! This, of course, sparked an uproar. Fortunately, the crowd was distracted by the sudden arrival of Sakura and Ino. The two provided enough of a distraction for Harry to drag Naruto to their regular, empty seats and avoid the ire of a room full of fresh shinobi recruits. Congratulations, Captain Subtle, what's gonna be your encore? Parading naked through the streets with a fox tattooed across your chest? Hinata Hyuga, who was sat not 3 seats from the boys, immediately grew beet red from the mental image she got from listening in on the conversation and began hyperventilating. A small trickle of blood dribbling from her nose as her bloodlines subconsciously activated for a second or two. She was still struggling not to faint when Irika came into the room looking slightly worse for wear but better than the previous night, and began announcing team placements. She came round from her stupor several minutes into the announcement. You will be Team 6 under Special Jounin Gatad Lin, Uzumaki Naruto, Uzumaki Harry and Haruno Sakura and Oo. You will be Team 7 under Jounin Hitaki Kakashi, Yamanaka Ino, Naro Shikamaru, Akamichi Choji and Oo. You will form Team 8 under Saratobi Asuma. Team 9 is still in circulation, so Inuzuka Kiba, Hyuga Hinata and Abirame Shino will become Team 10 with Jounin Yuhi Kurini as their sensei. Team 11. Hinata zoned out of the rest of the announcements. She was disappointed at not being on the same team as her Naruto-kun, but didn't feel the sense of revulsion towards her teammates, as the other girls obviously did with their protests. She cast a sidelong glance at her crush while silently wondering when Harry had changed his name from Potter to Uzumaki. She zoned back in when there turned out to be some confusion regarding the broody Uchiha. Apparently the council had pushed for special treatment of him again. He was to be placed as an apprentice attached to all teams and rotated amongst them for training whilst also being trained for solo assassination missions by some special jounin who apparently only did those kind of missions. The village elders were apparently pushing to give the boy as much training and freedom as they could. Irika-sensei, why can't I be on a team with Sasuke-kun instead of these two idiots? Ino-pigs/forehead, stop copying me, came the surprisingly simultaneous outbursts of the Sasuke fan club leaders. It really was amazing how similar the two were when you stepped back from their rivalry for a second. Though even that was another similarity of the two. Hinata sighed in frustrated pity at the two before turning and staring at her crush once again. It could be a long time before she next saw him. After all, several hours later Naruto, Harry and Sakura were all waiting in the same classroom for a jounin who still hadn't turned up. Sakura had opened up her school bag, gotten out a book and was trying to ignore the antics of the other two people in the room. Said other two were furtively debating how best to greet their new instructor in true Uzumaki style. Harry suggested he put an explosive seal on the doorframe. Naruto pointed out that Irika-sensei might get mad if they destroyed the academy on the day they left it. Harry suggested putting one of the paint bomb seals or even the manure bomb seal instead. Naruto asked if he had tested them with his new ability yet. Harry said no and Naruto immediately vetoed the idea. They finally settled on Naruto's idea. There was a small puff of smoke in the room and then they settled down to wait. Not long afterwards there was the sound of the door opening and a masked face with spiky silver hair and left eye covered with a headband poked through. Before it could say anything it was hit in the face by a pie. Cue epic laughing fit from inside the room. Slowly a hand reached up and caught a bit of the pie with the index finger before it was pushed under the mask. Custard, anyway, meet me up on the roof in 5 minutes. Oh, and by the way, I hate. That was as far as he got before the pie on his face poofed up in a big smoke screen to reveal a Naruto clone holding onto the man's head with its arms and legs clamped around his face. The man and clone promptly fell into the room, where the clone just as promptly dispelled. The man looked on in shock for a few seconds before shouting, "Oh God, what part was in my mouth?" turning and running from the room at full speed, screaming his head off. Harry turned to Naruto, who quickly replied to his friend's unasked question, "Just hair, I think, though he doesn't need to know that." It was 20 minutes later when they were joined by the masked man on the roof. Harry was still having giggle fits whilst Naruto was doing his best to keep a straight face. Sakura was simply looking at the two with unbridled anger, frustration and hatred. The Jounin, who was slightly green looking in the area they could see of his face, sat on a railing on the edge of the roof whilst the 3 Genins sat in front of him on the floor. "Hello, I'm your Jounin instructor Hatake Kakashi. Usually I'd start this by asking you guys to all describe yourselves a bit, but first I would like to know if you guys have any questions for me." Naruto raised his hand, the picture of a meek and nervous child. "Blondie, go ahead." "Sensei, are we married now?" If they could have seen Kakashi's face at this point, the look of horror would have been utterly priceless, as would the greenish pale tinge. As it was, they had to simply make do with him recoiling in shock so violently that he fell off of the railings and proceeded to roll, head over heels, backwards off of the slanted roof to finally slam into the ground below. This was too much for Naruto, who broke character and joined his foster brother in rolling on the floor laughing so hard they felt their sides would burst. When Kakashi finally made it back up to the roof, he saw the 2 boys struggling to breathe from laughter, and the pink-haired girl reading whilst shooting disparaging looks at the pair. He was secretly glad there was very little chance these 3 would pass his team test, and he could be rid of the nightmare before it had begun. He was a little confused at the blonde's apparent shape-shifting abilities on top of his shadow clone technique. The former was not in his report, and neither should be possible for a genin. There was also the raven-haired boy's reported skill in chakra projection and seals. Actually, there was good evidence that both boys were at least semi-competent at seals. But that wasn't really the issue next to the other technique. Normally only a seal master would have been allowed to attempt to learn the chakra projection technique, as it not only required a fundamental understanding of the seal used but also high chakra reserves and was ripe for potential abuse. Pinkie was apparently strong, book-smart, and quick to anger with a respect for authority figures. That being the case, she would possibly a good help in keeping the other 2 in line. However, it looked like she had already tried and given up to him. Definitely not teamwork material. Oh well, let's just get it over with, he thought to himself. Right, I'll remember that when we're on the training field. Blondie, for now, let's introduce ourselves so we know a little bit about each other. You know, favorite jutsu, people you admire, hobbies, ambitions, favorite animal, anything. Pinkie, you first. Why don't you go first, sensei? Sigh, fine, my name's Hatake Kakashi, Jounin of Konoha. My best technique is a secret A-class assassination one I invented, so I can't tell you about that. I haven't really got any hobbies. Haven't really thought about the future much. Not much to tell. Your turn. Sakura looked shocked and not a little bemused by her sensei's antics, but Harry just laughed. My turn, he declared. Name's Harry Uzumaki. Used to be Potter, but this idiot adopted me the other day. I like ramen, pulling pranks with my new foster brother, and generally causing chaos wherever I go. Dislike stuffy old guys who think they can run everybody's lives simply because they're old and know better. Oh, and stuck-up self-absorbed emo pricks. Best jutsu is either the academy replacement one. Seriously, that thing's just bloody useful. Or my new chakra projection, but I need to know more seals to properly use it. Haven't really thought about the future either. But Lughead here wants to be Hokage, so I'll probably help him with that. Oh, and the best animal in the entire world is the peregrine falcon, 'cause it's insanely fast. That's me done. Who's next? Not to be outdone, Naruto spoke up. I'm Naruto Uzumaki, future Hokage. Believe it. I love ramen. Hate how long it takes to cook. I like training and pranks. Hate the stupid council and their pet emo. But like Hokage Aji-san, 'cause he's cool and he's keeping my hat warm for me. My best techniques are the Academy Transformation and Shadow Clone, though that one tends to be a bit weird if I make too many and they pop all at once. The greatest animal ever is the dragon, 'cause it's just awesome. Baka, dragons don't exist, came the cry from Sakura. Oh yeah? Prove it. You can't prove that they do. Idiot. I can't prove that smells exist either. Smells do exist. No, they could be just tricks of your mind, Harry interjected. What? Look, Naruto decided, let's put it to a vote. All those who say dragons exist raise their hands. Harry, Naruto, and 12 newly formed blonde shadow clones all raised their hands. All those against. Sakura was too stunned to do anything, therefore by democratic majority dragons exist. Kakashi just sighed and shook his head. It'll all be over soon. It'll all be over soon. Right, moving on, Pinky, your turn. But Sensei, you aren't going to change their minds and we don't have time for you to try. Now please, your intro. Fine, I'm Sakura Haruno. My dream for the future is to become a strong kunoichi, help restore a certain clan and prove that dragons don't exist. I like a certain someone and dislike these two baka. My academy techniques are good, but I don't feel like they are particularly suited to me except for the Bushin. But only because Iruka-sensei says that I might be a strong genjutsu user when I get older. I really don't care about animals, but the panda is strong and cute, like me, so that'll do. Right, now that that's all over with, you have the rest of the day free. Report to Training Ground 7 tomorrow at 8 o'clock sharp for your true genin test. Oh, and my advice is don't eat breakfast. You'll just throw it up. But Sensei, we already had. Sakura started before she realized that he'd already left. Fine. Guess I'll just go look for Sasuke-kun. Wonder what he's doing now? In the forest surrounding Konoha's training field number 36. You can Ryuin, but you can't Hai-eyed. ARGH, stupid snake bitch. Leave me alone. Oh, Sasuke-kun, you say such hurtful things. Don't make me hurt you back. Shit! Where are you keeping all these kunai? Are you asking to see under my coat? You naughty boy. Never on the first date. No. Not more snakes. Careful, Sasuke-kun, I wouldn't want to cut off anything important, not before you've properly thanked me for all the training I'm going to give you. Oh, please God, not another fangirl. What do you reckon she's thinking about? Naruto asked Harry after Sakura had been staring off into space for a few minutes. Like I care, come on. We can get some of our community service done before we go home. Yeah, good point. Let's go. The next morning at Training Ground 7, Baka's Kakashi-sensei told us not to eat breakfast. Meh, he only said we'd throw it up. I've never thrown anything up in my life. Yeah, plus I couldn't just sit there and watch him stuff his face with so much ramen without joining in myself. At least now we won't be hungry if he's late again. 3 hours later. We told you so, we told you so, we told you so. The sing-song voices of Harry and Naruto came from the clearing in the center of the training ground. Shut up with that stupid song. What are you, 6? Sakura was too hungry to really put up much of an argument. Annoyance or no. Nope, 10. Oh, and by the way, we told you so, we told you so, we told you so. Oh heyo, everyone, came the unmistakable voice of their new sensei as he appeared on top of one of the logs stood upright in the center of the training ground. Sorry I'm late. I was on my way and a black cat crossed my path, so I had to take the long way around and I got lost. Liar! Screamed Sakura, her finger pointed indignantly at the man. Seriously, sensei, if you're that bad at lying to us, what'll you do if you get captured? Harry asked once the ringing in his ears died down. Oh, simple, not get captured. Kakashi waved the question off as if he'd answered it 100 times. Now, for your genin tests. Sensei, we already took our tests in the academy. Those merely tested potential. This tests your aptitude. If you can't pass, then you go back for remedial classes at the academy until you pass a Jounin's test. By the way, mine's the hardest. I've never passed the team yet. Good luck, he said with an eye smile. Now, I have these 2 bells. He held them up, ignoring the snorts of laughter from the male members of the team. Your job is to get them from me in order to pass. Whoever does the worst or doesn't have a bell when this timer goes off is tied to one of these posts and gets to watch whilst the other 2 eat their lunches. That said, he tied the 2 bells to the belt loop of his trousers. By the way, if you don't come at me with the intent to kill, then you'll never get a bell. His speech done, he stepped back from the others and reached behind himself into his kunai pouch. Suddenly he blurred, and the next second he was sat on top of Harry and Naruto's heads that had at some point been forced together and into the ground. Good initiative. But I didn't say go yet, did I? Two muffled voices could be heard saying something that could have been no sensei but also could have been damn team. Kakashi decided to go with the first one as it meant he wouldn't have to beat the two senseless before they could even fail his test. Okay, go, he said once they had stood up and he finally brought his hand out of his kunai pouch to reveal a book. Sakura had disappeared into the underbrush of the forest, but Harry and Naruto just stayed and started giving their sensei appraising looks. Not gonna hide? You can't beat me in a straight-out fight, Kakashi observed as he turned a page in the book. You do know I can just put an explosive seal on your forehead or even your eyeball, right? Harry asked. Yes, but I can disrupt the chakra before you finish and render it useless, so that point's moot, isn't it? You can't kill me so easily. Fair enough. I'm also guessing Naruto's clones in close combat would also be just as easy? Yep, don't feel too bad. You're just genin. Either of you can beat me head-on. Though I'd be disappointed if you didn't even try. Oh, and whatever you are going to try, you best get a move on. Time's running out. Good to know, Naruto said before both of the boys popped in a small smoke cloud. Seal-less shadow clones, henge and evasion skills, not bad for brats. Especially if he only learned that technique 2 days ago. Elsewhere in the forested part of the training area, Naruto briefed Harry on the conversation, whilst the squad of blonde clones made their way to test out their sensei's taijutsu, so he could probably stop any attack that's specifically targeted on him. What about under him? The black-haired shinobi pondered out loud. Kunai to move him into position then blow up the ground he's standing on? Might work, but he'd probably see through it, his blonde counterpart opposed. Mobbing him with sheer numbers probably won't work either. You suppose I should send out another clone squad in case the others get popped too quick? Couldn't hurt. We only have a limited time. Can't let him get too comfortable, he. What? I know that grin. If this involves blowing me up again, you can forget it. I'm still trying to repress the memories from the Mizuki incident. Nah, I wouldn't do that again now that I know what effect it has on you. I'm not that heartless. Not until you find a way to block out the memories you get at least. Then we'll talk about mass cloned suicide bomber squads of death. Anyway, remember that idea you had with the henged kunai? The one you couldn't get to work because they lost their illusion after you threw them? Yeah, so? Oh, brilliant! Time to officially test Operation Mindfuck. I've wanted to say that for ages. Kakashi was not having a good time. After the initial confrontation with Naruto's clones, an 8-man squad of them had appeared and engaged him in a 9-way brawl. He still had his book out but was unable to keep reading of Natsuko's adventures due to the blonde and orange nightmares circling him. He'd dispelled 5 of them already, but the other 3 seemed to have learned from the first ones and hadn't made any of the same mistakes twice. This was probably the fabled strength of the Shadow Clone Jutsu's learning effect at work. Currently the 3 had surrounded him in a triangle formation. He managed to keep 2 in sight at all times despite his eye coverings, but the third always proved elusive no matter which way he turned. Sudden displacement in the air behind him caused him to whirl around, leg cocked to counter the clone's lunge with a roundhouse kick, but the blonde ducked under the blow and came back with a sloppy uppercut, whilst the other 2 took the opportunity to close the distance. Fortunately for Kakashi, his student had left himself wide open and he proceeded to grab the fist of the uppercutting clone and carry on its momentum in the form of an overhead throw, catapulting him straight at one of his brethren and taking out 2 with one move. He smiled at that under his mask. It was a rarity in actual combat to be able to produce a stupendously cool or awesome move and execute it perfectly. Now he only had one more clone to deal with, which would be a cakewalk, before he could actively hunt down the 3 genin hopefuls. Turning a page in his book, he absent-mindedly dodged a series of kunai that came from out of the undergrowth near the trees. Deciding to have a little fun with the last opponent, he grabbed one of the projectiles as it passed him by putting his finger through the ring at the base of the handle, twirling it and launching it at his adversary. His visible eye widened in shock when the kunai poofed halfway through its flight and turned into the blonde nightmare. Said nightmare landed before turning with a curious expression on his face, whilst one hand rubbed its backside. Sensei? Why did you do that to me? It hurt but felt kind of good as well and made my tummy feel weird, it asked the now horrified jounin. He was unable to respond, however, as several other kunai erupted from the bushes as well as things that had no business being on the training field. Shakily the man dodged under shuriken, kunai, a lamppost, several small rodents, a TV, 2 kitchen sinks, a grand piano and what looked like a Beatles' greatest hits album, all the while staring at his finger with a horrified expression on his face. Harry and Naruto silently laughed whilst the blonde kept up a steady rain of projectile clones that hinged into kunai then some random object as he threw them. Harry, still giggling slightly, decided to put his earlier idea to the test, quickly checking for confirmation from Naruto. He proceeded to litter the ground of the training field with explosive seal after explosive seal, adding in his own variations on occasion to see how they do when used in conjunction with his chakra projection. Naruto gave him the go-ahead so long as he didn't blow up too many of his clones at once, as they, in their various hinged forms, were still littering areas of the training field. He then formed several thrower clones and told them to spread out and wait for him to send them projectile clones when they had gotten into position. Hopefully that would keep his sensei from discerning their hiding place too quickly. Looking back out onto the training field, he watched as Kakashi ducked under a flying tandem bicycle, then dived quickly to the left as Harry's first explosive seal detonated. Kakashi was quickly getting sick of this. He'd long since had to put away his book, and this was just getting more and more ridiculous. First the blonde one was mocking him. Then he'd started having to dodge everything and anything the man could think of as it came flying from out of the trees. Then he'd had to start dodging as random chakra spikes in the ground set off a continuous stream of explosions, and finally it seemed the blonde had created even more clones to throw all items and sundry at him. As he was suddenly avoiding random projectiles from multiple directions, he couldn't even pass them yet and escape this nightmare that way, as the two boys had obviously failed to incorporate their other teammate into their plans. Where was she anyway? Is that a little old lady? Did he actually just throw a little old lady at me? Was that last explosion a manure bomb? What the fuck? With a sudden burst of anger, this own confusion as well as the boy's lack of respect and propriety, the Jounin backflipped out of the path of a flying housecat/refrigerator combo and launched a wave of his own kunai back at most of the hiding places he'd been attacked from, landing on top of the small stream that bisected the training area gracefully. Feeling no chakra spike, he guessed that the black-haired boy couldn't project a seal onto the water's surface. Smiling slightly, he waited to see what they would do next as he surveyed the mess of debris that was once Training Ground 7, proud that his ANBU skills had gotten rusty in his time since retiring from the Corps. Unfortunately, that brief respite was short-lived, as all of the junk and manure/paint-covered trash that had littered the ground vanished in a great smoke cloud, only to be replaced by blonde after grinning blonde, all of which stared at him for a second before pulling out a kunai each and charging at him as one. Kakashi's visible eye twitched as something in the back of his brain went snap before he began to run through an excessive number of hand seals at a blurring pace. Finishing on bird, he yelled out, "Water style, water dragon," and laughed in manic glee as his most powerful water technique wiped out wave after wave of the annoying pests. Seeing that he'd exhausted his supply of targets, he let his jutsu collapse. Pulling out a kunai and wielding it in a reverse grip, he called with just a little too much manic laughter, "My turn. I'm coming to get you," before disappearing into the forest. Well, I think Operation Mindfuck was a definite success. Harry congratulated his teammate. Think we went a bit too far? Naruto asked warily, his mind still feeling a little funny after the influx of memories hit him. Never listen to anyone who says getting hit by the same dragon made of water over 2,000 times is fun. Nah, he's a jounin. He should be able to handle it after he's calmed down a little. A sudden scream echoed from a distant part of the forest. Okay, maybe we went a little too far, Harry admitted. Time to save Sakura-chan? Yep, definitely time to save Sakura. Wonder what she's been doing this whole time. After the initial bout between Kakashi and Naruto's clone, Sakura had determined that she definitely didn't want to go up against her sensei in close combat, so had instead fallen back on her strengths. Planning and control, in other words, she began setting up a rather elaborate trap network. Unfortunately, she hadn't taken into account the possibility of her sensei's minor break from reality, and so was rather unprepared for him to breeze through every single one of her traps with ease before appearing behind her, his visible eye twitching and slightly unfocused, and putting her into a genjutsu version of her own hell. In short order, she had seen her Sasuke-kun appear before her and propose to her, before being ambushed and beaten by ninja after ninja whilst she could only stare in shock. Then he had collapsed and looked on the edge of death, before Ino had appeared and somehow healed him. He then confessed his undying love and gratitude to her, and the two walked off holding hands and kissing whilst Sakura was forced to watch. That was only in the first second. She'd then been exposed to Sasuke turning into a demon and raping then killing her, Sasuke and her at their wedding before Sasuke turned into Naruto just as the two kissed, Sasuke and Naruto having a wedding, her and Naruto raising a family of tiny little blonde Narutos who all demanded her immediate attention, Sasuke getting blown up by Harry, Harry blowing her up, her rejecting Harry, who turned into Sasuke and saying he'd rather go out with Ino instead. The list continued on and on and on until finally she could take no more, she screamed and passed out. Kakashi giggled evilly before turning and running off to find the others. Arriving at the scene, the two boys gave each other a look that said, "Yep, we might have gone too far this time," before Naruto bent down to check Sakura's pulse and breathing. Standing back up, he announced, "She's fine, just unconscious. What do you think we should?" He never finished as a ringing filled the area, indicating the test was over. Bollocks. Harry cursed. "Come on, pick her up. We might as well get back. Maybe Sensei's come back to his senses now that the test is over." Fortunately he had. He even looked at the two sheepishly as they arrived, Naruto carrying Sakura over his shoulder like a sack of potatoes. When the team had assembled in front of him somewhat warily, he scratched the back of his head and apologized. "Sorry about that, you guys did well. You almost managed to complete the test. Even if you were lacking a small part, Pinky should be fine too. I just hit her with a few mid-powered genjutsu." He proceeded to crack some smelling salts under her nose that he pulled out of his jacket pocket. Once Sakura had been awoken, he proceeded to debrief them. "Naruto, Harry, well executed tactics and good adapting to the situation. You managed to keep me on my toes and even stressed me out, which is a good way to force an enemy to make a mistake. However, you saw the inherent danger of doing that to someone more powerful than you and earning their ire, Sakura. That was an impressive array of traps you set up, and quickly too. If I hadn't been infuriated to the point that I was and stopped limiting myself, then it could have caused me some severe problems in getting to you. Unfortunately, none of you managed to get either of the bells nor figure out the true point to this test, though two of you came close. That being the case, I'm going to give you all a second chance. But first," he smiled and held up a piece of rope. "It's lunchtime." Sakura was very annoyed. First, she hadn't even managed to last 5 seconds against Kakashi because her two teammates had enraged him so that she could relate to. Second, she was still hungry as she hadn't eaten any breakfast, which led directly to the third point, in that she was tied to a log whilst the other two ate their lunches, which Kakashi-sensei had forbidden them to share with her. Harry surprised her when he first looked around once their sensei had left before coming over and holding out some of his food for her. "What are you doing, Baka?" "Kakashi-sensei said he'd fail us if you feed me." Her belly betrayed her as it grumbled in protest. "Look, we're gonna need all the help we can get to get those bells. Naruto and I tried our best, and we couldn't get near him before he snapped on us. Naruto needs all the energy he can get to replace all the shadow clones he made. But all I did was set off a few explosive seals, and we both had breakfast already, so it makes sense that I should share my lunch with you. You're gonna need all the energy you can get to help us out. Plus, if you don't become a ninja, how will you impress your Sasuke-kun? What if Sensei catches us? Naruto's got some clones patrolling the area. We can't be sure, but we don't think he's nearby." "Fine, just hurry up, I'm starving." Just as Harry began spooning, or rather chopsticking, rice into Sakura's mouth, there was a great yell and blast of wind as Kakashi appeared in a swirl of leaves. "What do you think you're doing?" he demanded. "We need her," Naruto spoke up, rising to his feet to stand by his brother and first crush. "She's on our team and we can't beat you without her. She can't help if she's hungry. So despite your rules, we're gonna help her out and feed her, even if it means failing." "Right then, if that's how you feel about my rules, you pass." "Congratulations." "Oh yeah, then we'll what?" "You pass, congratulations. You're the first team I've had to show true teamwork in spite of my rules. Those who break the rules are the worst of scum. But those who betray their teammates are even lower than the worst scum imaginable. Now, who wants some proper lunch?" "My treat, Blondie, you okay?" Naruto had gone strangely quiet since his outburst. Slowly he raised his head, grinning from ear to ear. "Yada! Now, before we get started, I'm going to lay down some ground rules for you three." It was 2 days after Kakashi had declared them an official genin team, and the start of their first proper training session as Team 7. Naruto and Harry were both ecstatic about getting some real training from a jounin, whereas Sakura was nervous as hell, trying not to think of what might happen on a team with at least 2 clinically insane and, now, official ninja. The only good thing she'd heard was that her Sasuke-kun would be stopping by occasionally to learn ninjutsu, and even more once he'd activated his bloodline for advanced training. Now, Harry, Naruto, as of this moment you are not to use either of your kinjutsu without my express permission. He waited for their groans and shouts of protest to subside before continuing, not even going into the fact that you obtained them illegally and through questionable circumstances. I will not have you simply learning one or two powerful techniques and then using them as a crutch. You might get lucky and make it to Chunin or even Special Jounin if you do. But if you were to run into someone who could think and strategize quickly or who had a technique to counter yours, you would be crushed, quickly and mercilessly, all because you were relying on a single, catch-all strategy or technique. Don't think that I'm playing favorites either, because, Sakura, you are getting a massive attitude adjustment that you'll need if you want to survive. Whilst he waited for the message to sink in, he dug around in his pouch for some. There they are. Now then, said Kakashi, holding up 3 pieces of paper. As I am pretty much a ninjutsu specialist, I shall be training you all in the offensive capabilities of chakra. To that end I am going to need you all to channel a bit of chakra into these slips of paper so that I can train you in your elemental affinities. Those can either be earth, fire, wind, water, light or shadow. Naruto, you first. Naruto held up the paper Kakashi had given him. At first nothing happened, then the paper turned an inky midnight black, sliced itself in half and crumpled into 2 little black balls. Sakura and Kakashi were staring at him in shock. Harry and Naruto just looked incredibly confused. Okay, that I wasn't expecting, Kakashi exclaimed when he had finally broken out of his stupor. You seem to have a very strong shadow affinity, at least as high as a Nara, which turned it black, and good wind affinity that cut it solidly in half, and light affinity that crumpled the 2 halves. The unusual thing is that normally people don't attain their secondary or tertiary affinities until their Chunin and Special Jounin ranks. Anyway, Harry, your turn. Don't be disappointed if you don't get such a strong reaction. Harry lifted the paper to eye level and focused his chakra. All of a sudden the paper split just as Naruto's had, but instead of crumpling or blackening, 1 half burned away, almost singeing his fingers, whilst the other crumbled to dust in his grip. So, he began, seeing the doubly shocked expressions on Sakura and Kakashi's faces. I'm guessing crumbling means earth, the cut is wind, and his eyes widened at the implications and the joke coming to the forefront of his mind. Naruto, I swear to, but he was already too late. Boogie Wonderland, damn you, you little blonde bastard. Shut up. Stop running away. Pop pop pop, oh real mature, hiding behind your clones. Take this, chakra projection, exploding seals, boom, stop hiding you sneaky little shit. I'm a ninja, it's in the job description, came the reply from within the forested part of the training field. Shaking herself out of her shock, Sakura looked at her warring teammates, as they both disappeared into the forest, and then to their sensei. A Kakashi-sensei? Are you okay? Shouldn't you be stopping them from using those techniques? Coming to just in time to hear. Don't you dare call me Verdine White. From the direction of the 2 boys, Kakashi responded. I'll get around to it later, don't tell anyone I told you this. But I think I may have bitten off more than I can chew when I agreed to take you guys on as students. Oh well, while we're at it, you may as well check out your affinities. Sakura's piece of paper ended up about halfway soggy and slightly crumpled. Congratulations, Sakura. If it hadn't been for those 2, I'd have said that was a pretty impressive sight for a genin. However, I'm starting to think they shouldn't count when it comes to normality. Both water and light affinities though, that's good going. Yeah, congrats Sakura-chan. Came the voice of their blonde compatriot, standing right next to them. Naruto, when did you get here, and where's Harry? Sakura asked, shocked that she hadn't noticed him sneaking up on her. I just got here, and Harry's a mildly irritated twitch appeared on his face. Just dispelling clones on the way back here, shudder. I always hated Harry-kun Snob Bomb Seal, and it's even worse when you're the target of it. Anyway, if you'll excuse me, I have to go before our friendly neighborhood pop star hits me with an explosive seal. See ya. Oh, no you don't, Kakashi announced as he grabbed Naruto's collar. First things first, you are going to teach your teammates the shadow clone technique. Why, sensei? Sakura asked. To help you learn. Shadow clones have eidetic memories and transfer them to their owner when they are destroyed. And to the other clones, Naruto pointed out. Say again, Blondie. When my first lot of clones fought you the other day, they got better the more you destroyed because they got the memories of what didn't work against you when the others popped. Kakashi pondered the possibilities. Sensei, you okay? Sakura asked. Naruto. You bastard. I'll kick your what's up with the scarecrow? Harry asked, at long last having hunted down the final shadow clones and made his way back to them. Nothing, Mop Top, I'm perfectly fine. Now Naruto here was just about to teach us all the shadow clone technique, weren't you? Kakashi asked, breaking out of his self-induced stupor. Yes, sensei? Good. Now as either of you have the shadow affinity that Naruto does, it might take you a while to get it right and may cost you more chakra to perform. But it'll be more than worth it for cutting down training times, Sakura. This is a fairly chakra-draining technique, so before you attempt it I want you to show me a chakra pulse just to be sure you have the power to pull it off. They all turned to Sakura to watch as she built up as much chakra as she could and released it in a pulse that extended a few feet away from her body. Good job, Pinky. Looks like you should have enough to make 1 or 2 clones at once. Don't push yourself though. We don't want you laid up in hospital recovering from chakra exhaustion for the next week. Now, Naruto, the technique if you please. Naruto began, all of a sudden self-conscious at having everyone's attention focused entirely on him. I'm not Just give us a demonstration and talk us through how you do it, Kakashi advised gently. Right, he formed his hands into a cross-shaped seal. This is the main seal. Though there's a few others that I find get in the way, I focus some chakra into the shape of my own body. The best way to do this is to focus on the image of your shadow and fill it with chakra, then sort of push the rest of the chakra you want to use inside it. The trick is to keep it flowing like it does when it's in me, if that makes sense. Once I think I've pushed enough and I then let the technique itself handle the rest. You don't have to worry about putting too much into the technique as it splits any excess into more bodies. Too little though, and it doesn't work, and it apparently just dissipates. I've never seen it do that though. The smallest number I've managed to make is around 7, but the scroll said I should make 1 and work up from there. That said, the boy yelled Kagebushin no Jutsu. Suddenly there were 11 Narutos, all in the same stance with the cross-hand sign held in front of their chests, staring at the 3 other members of Team 7. Kakashi could have facepalmed at the boy's lack of chakra control combined with insane reserves. Normally a Jounin would be able to make 20 shadow clones and still remain combat-ready. A Genin maybe 1 or 2 before becoming tired, but if he was to be believed then Naruto could spam 8 to 10-man teams like it was nothing. He wondered for a minute if it was a byproduct of the Kyuubi, or some kind of bloodline the boy had that gave him such massive chakra reserves. Okay, thanks for that Naruto. While we work on the technique I want you to start on chakra control exercises. Make as many clones as you think you can without exhausting yourself, then I want you to start the tree climbing exercise. You do know that one, don't you? Yeah, came 11 voices at once. Aji-san gave me and Harry-kun a scroll about it about a year ago. I'm still not very good at it though. Okay then, what I want you to do is have all your clones try it at once, each doing things a little differently. After every try I want the ones that did the best to dispel so the others get the memories, and then I want you to try again. When you can walk up and down vertical surfaces instinctively, then you'll have mastered the technique. At that point I want you to come back here so I can test you. Hi, sensei. 11 voices affirmed their understanding. Oh, and leave 1 clone here that we can ask for advice from while we try and learn the technique. Hi, sensei. The voices cried again before a great shout of shadow clone technique was heard, and the clearing was suddenly full of orange-clad blonde kids. All but one then disappeared into the forest, and could be seen running up and falling off of trees, with the occasional pop and puff of smoke to indicate one had dispelled to share its memories of success. Right, you two, what are you waiting for? Kakashi announced, turning to his other students, trying to ignore the blonde tidal wave he just unleashed on the forests of Konoha. Several hours later. Oh, come on, Naruto got this in less than 3 hours. How the hell is it taking me so long? Harry was not a happy bunny. He was nearing exhaustion. Sakura had needed to stop to rest several times over the past 5 hours, one of which they'd incorporated into a lunch break. They tried to find Naruto to tell him, but unfortunately the blonde knucklehead had disappeared looking for bigger trees to practice on, taking his clone army with him. They told their clone to dispel and send him a message, but they hadn't heard anything back from him, and Kakashi was starting to get worried. It was fortunate for the lazy man's sense of duty that his wayward charge showed up just as they were finishing their training session, calmly walking into the field with a stick of something in his mouth. Hey, Rito, where've you been? What's that? Harry asked his brother. Oh, sorry, I kind of wandered a little far and ended up in some place with giant trees and huge animals that wiped out my clones when I was tree climbing. I thought they'd get me too, but then I met a nice lady who gave me some of this. he said in a rather airy voice whilst waving his food at them. Apparently it's called dango, and it's almost as good as ramen. Here, try some, I've got a whole box. Hey, this is good, Harry exclaimed after trying a stick. What happened with the nice lady? You getting a crush on some hot older woman, bro? Maybe. She wasn't wearing much apart from a cool trench coat, and she was throwing snakes and kunai at the team. She even stopped for a second to kill this huge tiger that was going after me and gave me this box of dango. Naruto grinned, his voice still a little weird and his eyes focused on something behind Harry. Ha, sounds like a laugh. Can't wait to meet her. By the way, are you feeling okay? No offense, but you're starting to sound a bit simple. Oh, no worries, I just got a few hundred sets of memories at once. Now I'm feeling kinda woozy in my head. He looked over to where Sakura was sat resting. Pretty hair, I'm gonna sit down for a minute. Saying that, he proceeded to fall on his backside in the center of the training field. At this point Kakashi decided to check on the two. Everything alright here? You okay, Blondie? Yeah, Kakashi-sensei, Harry explained. Naruto's just feeling a little out of it after getting his head stuffed full of hundreds of shadow clone memories at once. He also says he's found someplace with huge trees and giant animals that attacked him, but was saved by a scantily dressed woman who was throwing snakes at Sasuke team and killed a huge tiger before giving him a box of dango and sending him on his way. If it weren't for the fact that he actually has a box of dango on him, and I'd never seen him eat the stuff before, I'd have thought he's making it up or had a hallucination of some kind. Pretty pink hair. Oh, and he thinks Sakura's hair color is pretty. Wonder if he has some kind of weird unusual hair color fetish. Or maybe just an obsession with the color pink. It'd certainly explain why he's attracted to the banshee over there. Kakashi sighed his student's lack of focus. Harry, now is not the time. Pay attention. Naruto looks fine, but we still don't know how the Kage-Bushin technique is affecting his mind. I don't think he's having a hallucination, as I think I know the woman he met and probably where he ended up. Either way, I'm going to take him to the Yamanaka compound to get him looked at. You might want to come along as well. Just tell Sakura training's over for the day and to meet back here at the same time tomorrow. I'll see you at the Yamanakas. With that, he hoisted the blonde up onto his shoulder and set off towards Konoha's most famous flower shop. Arriving shortly at the Yamanaka's flower shop, Harry was guided to a small sitting room by who he could only assume was Ino's mother. Already present were Kakashi, Naruto, who was lying on a long couch, and a blonde man he recognized immediately. Inoiki-san. Hey, Harry-kun, how are those kunai I got you holding up? Great, they're much better quality than the ones I normally get. Naruto loves his too. He's taken to fighting with them in close quarters so as not to lose any. Good to hear. Anyway, as your sensei was explaining to me, we fear Naruto might have had a small incident with his shadow clone memory assimilation. Is it bad? It could be much worse. He's still breathing, so we know that basic functions are still working, and from what you told Kakashi, he still has his memory retention and basic speech functions, so we know the damage hasn't been too extensive. I'm going to do a mind dive and see what's the matter, and if there's anything I can do to fix it. Hopefully it'll just be a bit of exhaustion, and it'll go away after a good night's sleep. So, are you going in now? Harry asked, looking over at Naruto, who still seemed fairly out of it as he was staring wide-eyed at the ceiling. Yeah, just as soon as thanks dear. He graciously accepted a mug of something his wife brought into the room. This is a special herbal concoction we make out of our flowers and allows us to more easily access others' mindscapes without the mental backlash our clan techniques usually involve. The last was directed at an incredulous-looking Kakashi. I might need a bit of a boost to get in there. His chakra might protest at the intrusion. You know the transfer jutsu? Yes, how much will you need? I have been training today, Kakashi answered. He'd been working on the Kage-Bushin just like his students and was only at around half his usual chakra reserves. I might not need any, it's just a precaution. Inoiki quickly downed the concoction in his mug. Ugh, horrible as always. Anyway, ready? Getting nods from the other two in the room, Inoiki began to run through hand signs, finally stopping on Dragon, Mind Transfer Technique, Mindscape Invasion, he cried, staring at Naruto's prone body. Suddenly both of them stopped moving and Inoiki slumped back into his seat. Inoiki opened his eyes carefully, unsure of what to expect. Sure, he'd been briefed on the boy's mental health before, even run a few sly tests in the weeks he'd gone to visit Harry after bringing him to the village. But this was on a whole different level, a full-on mental probe into the boy's subconscious. When no monsters appeared to be about to eat him, he relaxed, The mindscape he was in appeared to be a tunnel system of some kind. Looking down at the knee-high water he was in, he came to the quick conclusion that it was, in fact, a sewer. Awesome, he commented dryly. Just because he knew it wasn't real didn't make the prospect of trawling through a sewer any more appealing. Guess this means you have a dirty mind, kiddo? No, wait a second, sewer it may be, but dirty it is not. Him so subconscious chose a sewer, but a clean sewer. Thinks lowly of himself but has high personal standards at least. He looked around, noticing pipes lining the ceiling, a blue glow surrounding them. Occasionally a red surge would spread through a section of pipe, which looked to rust for a second before it was overcome by blue once again, and the damage would be undone. Now that is particularly interesting, he thought as he watched the play of colors repeat itself up and down the pipe networks he could see. Anyway, I'm not going to find anything just standing around here. Now where would Naruto be? Gotta think like he would. So what would Naruto do if he came upon this? Wander aimlessly, probably. Couldn't hurt. That said, he picked a direction and strode off confidently. Kakashi-sensei? Is Naruto gonna be alright? Joking aside, that is. Kakashi paused in his vigil over the two to give the boy a soft look. For all the attitude and pranks, he was still only a 10-year-old boy when all was said and done. He'll be fine. Inoiki's the best there is when it comes to the mind and healing it. He left out not to mention breaking it in the first place, as he doubted that'd go down well. Either it'd upset the boy or he'd ask for tips. Either sounded good for Kakashi, so he wisely chose to remain silent. Giving a small nod, Harry continued to watch over his foster brother, grateful and worried for a member of his family for possibly the first time he could remember. It didn't take long for Inoiki to find Naruto. Unfortunately, he found rather a lot of him. Well over 2,000 if he was any guess. He had also found the Kyuubi. Unfortunately, so had the Narutos. What was happening, he would later admit, was one of the strangest things he had ever seen. Every single Naruto was trying to fight the Kyuubi at once. To do that, they had to get past the bars of its cage. Once they were past the bars, there was nothing stopping the huge demon fox from fighting back. Finally, every time a Naruto was killed, it ended up fading away and a new one would fade into existence near the entrance to the room. So it went that wave after wave of Naruto clones would charge through the Kyuubi's cage only to be bitten, clawed, stomped or bashed by its mouth, claws, paws and tails respectively. It was like that night over 10 years ago all over again, with one minor difference. The Narutos would, each time they reappeared, brandish a new and more outlandish weapon or improvised weapon. He spotted two wielding washing machines, a good number with clubs. One had a bicycle in its hands. Two more were using a third as a battering ram. There were the occasional swords or sword variations. One was even holding a whip and a chair like a lion tamer at the circus. He stopped one who was wielding some kind of long sword and had painted half his face blue for some reason. Are you the original? Nope, clone. I was destroyed by a water dragon from Kakashi-sensei. Oh, do you know where the original is? The clone pointed somewhere towards the cage. That's helpful. The clone merely shrugged. Fine, off with you then. Inoiki dismissed the clone who charged forward yelling FREDOM. Only to be swatted back into the bars of the cage by a particularly vicious tail swipe. Using a bit of chakra to give himself some control of the mindscape, Inoiki made his voice several times louder than usual and made it reverberate all over the room. Would the real Naruto please stand up? This was met by the entire mob singing da-na-na-na-na, da-na-na-na-na, da-na-na-na, which was getting no one anywhere, so he tried again. Which one of you is the real Naruto? I'm the real Naruto was heard, shortly followed by, no, I'm the real Naruto. No, I am. I'm Spartacus. And I'm Brian, and so's my wife. This could go on all bloody day, Inoiki thought to himself, before trying. Never mind, would the real Naruto please come over here? Fortunately, only one Naruto made its way over towards him. Meanwhile, there was a rather strange conversation going on by the clones near the Kyuubi's left hind leg. Ha, good, so's my wife quote back there. What quote? You know, from Life of Brian. Don't remember I was talking about my actual wife. What? When the hell did you get married? Before we found this cage thing. Who did you marry in here? There's only us. You didn't? Yep, the one over there using the sexy jutsu. The honeymoon was awesome. Why would you do that? Shrug, sexy jutsu is sexy. No, but I mean when she pops we'll all get the memories of everything you did with her / whatever. So? Like I said, it was awesome. We'll get the memories from its perspective, idiot. Oh God. What have I done? Protect the bride. Soon the call was taken up everywhere, and the clone's focus was changed from attack to defense/VIP extraction, with the main Naruto and Inoki. What was that all about? Inoki asked after the strange battle cry went up. I have no idea, so what's up, Inoki-san? Naruto asked, looking puzzled. How did you get here anyway? We're worried about you, Naruto. You're acting strange in the real world. I used the family jutsu to enter your mindscape to find out what was wrong. Oh yeah, guess I've been kind of focused on things in here since my clones found Fuzzbutt over there and pulled me in to oversee things. Yeah, about that. What are they doing attacking it over and over again? They're obeying my orders, trying to defeat it, or wear it down at least. Isn't that kind of futile? Not even all of the ninjas of Konoha could defeat the thing back when we were at full strength. Yeah, but my army just keeps respawning over and over again. I have an infinite number of soldiers who never get tired. Yes, but the QB is a chakra construct. As it doesn't have a real body, it can't get tired either. What are you going to do? Have two immortal forces locked in an epic battle for all eternity in your mindscape? Or it could surrender. What's with the weird weapons anyway? Inoki asked, not wanting to dwell on that thought any longer than necessary. I'm trying to find what I have a natural proficiency with. Whichever clone lasts the longest, and is most comfortable with their weapon will decide the weapon I'm going to train with in the real world. You really think you could have a weapon proficiency in? Is that a toaster? Yeah, ouch, that hurt. Besides, the Aburaim's weapon of choice is a swarm of bugs, if anything. If I turned out to be a master at refrigerator food, then not only would I be deadly on the battlefield, but it'd also confuse my opponents no end. Point taken. And by the way, if nothing else, you certainly are a master at Schrödinger if this is anything to go by. So what's your best weapon so far? That one over there, dual-wielding fully grown saber-toothed tigers. Naruto indicated a surprisingly agile and effective clone dodging the QB's jaws. I don't think that'd be plausible, or even possible outside your mindscape, Naruto. Damn, back to Tunfaz then. So I'm guessing you want me to come out of here then? Yeah, that's not a problem, is it? Well, these guys get a little distracted if I'm not around to focus for them. Not many of them have set their personalities yet, so they end up kinda susceptible to suggestions. Okay, well, just leave them some instructions then come out. Your brother and sensei are worried about you. Alright, give me a minute and I'll come out of it. Harry and Kakashi were both relieved when Inoki began to stir from his jutsu-induced coma. Before either could say anything, Inoki spoke up. He's fine. I think he somehow managed to switch his conscious and subconscious minds around. He says he's going to switch back in a minute. He just needs some time to organize his clones. Apparently once they've given their memories up, shadow clones that stick around in the subconscious mindscape start to develop their own personalities. He has them fighting it to gain experience, and find out if he has any natural weapon affinities. Oh, Harry said, sounds quite useful, so we should avoid saying things like, all you clones are superpowered warriors from the future then? I think that would definitely be a bad idea. At least if he had some kind of reference to go off. He doesn't read science fiction, does he? Read science fiction? Ha, no way, we watch comedy films a lot for prank ideas though. I can tell, came the unified voices of Kakashi and Inoki, who both looked at each other, and then decided they didn't want to know. Unfortunately for, well, everyone who would ever have to deal with Naruto's clones, several parts of that conversation would be fixed into Naruto's subconscious. Namely, any part it graced with its wandering attention. So mostly things his brother said, these would just happen to be watched comedy films, read science fiction. And I think you can guess what else. As of that minute, the clones in Naruto's mindscape didn't have any superpowered futuristic warriors to base themselves around, so nothing really major happened. Before Harry could do any more damage, Naruto suddenly brightened and took in his surroundings. Hey, where are we, Harry? Kakashi-sensei? Inoki-san? Hey, Naruto, we're in Inoki-san's house, you okay? Kakashi asked his student. Fine, sensei, just hungry and a little tired. Okay, from now on no accessing your mindscape without telling us or having Inoki-san nearby, got it? Yes, sensei. Good, training tomorrow, same time, same place. No missions today after your little episode. We'll start our first one tomorrow afternoon. Remember, no using your special techniques without my say-so, got it? Nods. Good, see you tomorrow. Thanks for this, Inoki-san. He turned to the man as the boys gave their goodbyes. No problem. I'm kind of assigned as Naruto's mind doctor anyway, in case you know. Good to know. By the way, Harry knows about the QB. What? You've had me dancing around the subject the whole time and he already knows. Johnny, you never asked CYA. 2 weeks later. Okay, guys, just remember, this is your first go at catching Tora. I don't know how it's taken this long for the mission to free up, but it's a sort of genuine rite of passage to have to hunt this cat as one of your first D-rank missions. You've completed 10 so far already, so you should, in theory, have the experience needed to take him down. But don't get cocky or we could be at this all day. Kakashi gave his team their usual pre-mission pep talk. He was really looking forward to seeing how Harry and Naruto's pranking would go when not directed at him. Either they or the cat is gonna suffer big time, he thought as they set off to begin the search. Oddly enough, I don't feel too bad about either of them. That can't be a good sign. Kakashi had told his team to go away and think about what kind of training they wanted to get out of him, and the results were already showing. In the 2 weeks since Naruto's breakdown, he'd been trying to use Kagebushin as little as possible, focusing instead on mainly ninjutsu. He'd also gone to Kakashi about getting some weapons training but still couldn't decide on which style fit him best. Kakashi had thought about sending him to Guy for a taijutsu evaluation, but that would be breaking the unwritten sensei code. Never admit you are inferior to another sensei, especially your rival. Still, if he couldn't decide on a style soon, he'd have to bite the bullet and go looking for the spandex-clad fitness freak. Harry had shown a marked improvement in sealing after Kakashi had found some old scrolls on the subject in the Jounin library section. Harry still wasn't allowed to use his chakra projection without express permission, and that was only to test new seal's potency and to keep his skills in it from regressing. He had also asked to have his taijutsu style completely reevaluated and changed from the academy style to something requiring more speed and dodging than strength and blocks. Sakura's new training program was to build up her chakra reserves and strength. She'd requested genjutsu training and Kakashi had provided her with the few D-class and C-class ones he knew and had promised to teach her a B-class one if she managed to get the others down. Both her and Harry had benefited from the Kagebushin exercise, but she got the most out of it as making a single clone gave her a pretty decent chakra capacity workout. That also allowed her to double her studying time, and Kakashi was thinking of sticking her in the medic training program once she became Chunin. For now he had her looking up pressure points and studying anatomy. If she couldn't match the other two in stamina, then Kakashi'd figured that giving her a more technical fighting style would allow her to challenge her teammates' taijutsu better. Now the results of 2 weeks of resetting their skills from the academy styles were about to be unleashed on a very angry, vicious and stubborn ball of fur. Kakashi almost wished he'd brought popcorn. An hour into the hunt their prey was sighted. Scarecrow, this is Panda Bear. I have visual on the target. A mile south of training ground 53 and a half a mile east of the village wall. What are me orders? Over. Panda Bear, this is Scarecrow. Hold position, we're coming to you. Keep your eyes on the target. ETA 2 minutes out. 3 shadowy figures stalked a fourth silently through the woods. They kept to the shadows until the fourth broke cover, still unaware of its followers. Moving slowly, it came to a small clearing where the sun shone through the forest canopy overhead. As it moved slowly into the light, a gasp and a groan could be heard, and before anyone could stop him, a dark-haired figure appeared in the clearing. You! My eternal rival! At last we meet once more in open combat. Now I finally have your name, we may greet each other as true adversaries, Tora team. Naruto had his head in his hands as he watched his brother square off against the cat, who actually also got into what could be called a cat-fighting stance. Why? Why this cat? Why now? Every pissing time, the same fucking thing. Why? Naruto? What's going on? Harry and Tora, I guess, have this kind of vendetta thing between them. Don't ask me. I don't know how it started, and Harry won't tell me. He just keeps saying ask the cat whenever I bring it up. Either way, he hates the cat almost as much as the cat hates him. Every time they meet this happens, Naruto explained, pointing out at the clearing where the two opponents had begun to charge at each other. Claws and kunai extended. Currently it's 42-39 in Harry's favor, but Tora's on a winning streak of 5 in a row. Shouldn't we, help? Not unless you want them both to turn on you. Trust me, I've tried. We can just hope Harry wins so we can finish the mission, or that Tora doesn't send him to the hospital again. Said combatants were locked in each other's holds. Harry had a kunai ready to stab through Tora's eye, but the cat had its claws poised at the boy's throat. Through silent agreement, both broke their holds and retreated to a safe distance. Mrio! Came the cat's surprisingly loud battle cry as it charged once more, claws extended to their fullest as it went for Harry's hamstrings. Harry laughed as he leapt over the cat and launched a barrage of shuriken at almost point-blank range. Tora proved to be quicker than expected, however, and managed to dodge all but a few of them, one of which nearly went all the way through its tail. Harry landed and immediately had to duck beneath the flying ball of furry death as it tried to decapitate him. As it was, the beast managed to rake several claws across the top of his head and rip out a chunk of hair. Kakashi was struggling to think. On the one hand, he was wondering why this always happened to him. On the other hand, he wondered if he and Guy looked as ridiculous when they squared off. Running out of hands, he then wondered on the one foot if he could claim some kind of mental health bonus for working with insane students. Finally, on the other foot, he wondered if this was all some kind of elaborate genjutsu Kurenai had put him in for reading his books in public again. Having run out of limbs to wonder on, he decided to just go with it, and make sure he brought popcorn the next time they went on a new mission. In the clearing, the two combatants were breathing heavily, battered and unmistakably worse for wear. Tora's fur was matted with sweat and blood, not to mention missing in places, and had several sharp instruments poking out of it in other places. Harry was missing a large chunk of hair. His muscle shirt was stained with sweat, and his jacket had some less than stylish tears in it. The back of his hand was bleeding from where it had brushed against the shuriken still lodged in Tora's tail, and he was favoring his right leg. "Time to step this up, what do you say?" Harry commented, and after receiving a small glare from the cat, which he took to be acceptance, shouted to Naruto, "Ruto! Sword!" A steel katana came whirring out of the underbrush, a transformed Naruto clone. Harry caught the spinning blade in a reverse grip, looked at it for a second before shouting back, "Not that sword, the other one. Fine, here." Naruto's voice came from the underbrush, shortly followed by a large broadsword with a decorative crossguard and pommel. Harry caught this sword, dropping the katana as he did so, before raising it above his head and yelling for all to hear, "By the power of Grayskull! Would it kill you to transform into a puma with a saddle or something just one time?" Harry asked Tora after exactly nothing happened. The cat merely blinked at him, somehow managing to look as bored and incredulous as a cat in a battle stance possibly could. It was then that the discarded katana poofed up in a plume of smoke to reveal a Naruto clone, who promptly charged at the distracted cat, intent on finishing the mission once and for all. He was met by the simultaneous strikes of both paw and foot, and sent flying into a tree where he exploded with minimal grace and much embarrassment. Both cat and boy eyed the broadsword Harry was still holding with a warning look. If a sword could laugh sheepishly, it would have. Instead, it turned a lightly redder shade of gray for a brief instant. Harry faced his opponent, a light breeze ruffling his hair and parting the front of his frayed jacket, carrying the scent of cat, sweat and blood through the forest. The sun shone down into the clearing and glinted off of the metal of his headband and the sword he held aloft. The dirt beneath his feet ground against the treads of his boots as he shifted his stance ever so slightly. He felt it then. The sun's fire, the gentle wind, the rough earth, his elements, his affinities. For one startling second he was centered in amongst them all and experienced their untamed power and all its inexpressible majesty. Just as swiftly it was gone, and he was reeling, drunk from the sensory overload and mentally rebelling at this feeling of being closed off from that wealth of sensation, as if a man, born blind, were to be given sight for 1 nanosecond. Years later that would be how he described the feeling. In his present, however, he would describe the feeling to be more akin to pain, as his opponent had chosen his moment of weakness to launch a flurry of attacks. A sloppy haymaker sent the cat into a brief retreat before it came forward with another flying claw strike. On a whim, Harry executed a replacement technique. With the approaching cat, instantly the two switched places and Harry was left facing an empty half of the clearing, whilst Tora was left facing tree bark at an unhealthy speed with no way to stop. Harry quickly spun around and his eyes appeared to flash briefly through a multitude of lines, kanji and symbols before settling. The trunk of the tree Tora was heading towards lit up briefly with the same seal before a viscous green substance seemingly exploded out from it, and encased the cat as well as an area 8 feet across around it. Naruto walked out from behind a tree shortly followed by Sakura and Kakashi when they saw that Tora wasn't moving from within the trap. Slowly the orange-clad ninja approached the substance, sniffed it, poked it with a finger which set it wobbling. Finally he put a piece in his mouth. "Lime," he declared, and proceeded to scoop up bigger chunks to eat. "How do you make a lime jelly seal, Harry?" "No idea. I was going for vanilla custard. Apparently the seals for them are similar enough that I made a mistake." "Baka!" They're nothing alike, how could you mix them up? Came Sakura's protest. Harry sighed and projected a seal onto a tree trunk in front of the group. Kakashi tends to jump back before he realized that it wasn't activating. Harry poured a bit more power into his technique and made it glow brighter. This is a basic energy to matter conversion seal. Wave modifiers, chakra focusers, energy converters. As he said this, different parts lit up to show what he was talking about. Essentially, it is a heavily modified exploding tag in that it takes chakra, converts it into a different kind of energy, makes it physical and then expels it. The main part that me and Naruto tweaked to change our exploding tags and make different ones is this part here. A piece in the upper right-hand section lit up as the rest of the seal faded away. At the moment it is set for pink paint. Suddenly the seal shifted. A few lines merged and one changed its angle slightly. Now it's a minor seal. It shifted again. A thick line split into two and one of the circles thickened slightly, and finally here's mucus, or the snot bomb as we call it. The glowing symbols faded from the tree trunk, leaving no sign it was there. We found those, Harry continued, through trial and error, writing out explosive note after explosive note, changing things one piece at a time, and we still have no idea how the final effects will be altered if we so much as change the angle of a line by a degree. It's not so much the case of writing out lime jelly please as it is of playing charades whilst hog-tied. Harry then rounded on Sakura, his face a mask of annoyed indignation. We found that if you extend one line by half an inch in the expulsion array, the seal will explode in a cone out of either side of the note, instead of in a sphere all around it. If you can explain that to me in a way that makes perfectly logical sense, then I will be happy to take your criticism on board. But until then, but out of things you can't even hope of understanding. With that he took out a scroll, projected a storage seal onto it, sealed away the cat and jelly encasing it, and headed off to the Hokage Tower to hand it in. Naruto gave Sakura a pitying look before taking off after his brother. Sakura just stood there stunned that the boy had yelled at her, while she knew that Harry didn't really like her much. He'd always stayed quiet, either because he knew Naruto liked her or because he preferred to just ignore her. Kakashi walked up to her and patted her on the shoulder. Don't worry, Pinky, I'll talk to him, and maybe get him some books on sealing theory from the library. He thought before taking off after his 2 mail charges. He was worried, not only about Harry's outburst, but also about how the daimyo's wife would take to find her cat had been trapped in enough jelly to render it immobile and then sealed into a piece of paper. Could living things even survive in a seal? Could it survive whilst encased in jelly for so long? Meh, I'll find out when I get there.